That's right. Needforseat.com is where you need to go if you need a seat. It's pretty much right there in the website name, Need for Seat. Do you have a need for a chair? Well, then you can go get yourself a Smite Maxnomic chair. Use code SmiteMax when you're on checkout, and you're going to be able to get a whole lot. That chair is very, very comfortable. I still use mine at home, even though you don't get to see it here. We still have six right there that are in the immediate vicinity that we use on the regular during the media days. Definitely go pick yourself up one. Again, go to needforseat.com. Of course, thank you to Maxnomic for all of the chairs, and of course the wonderful comfort that I had all throughout my life the last year and a half since I first got that Smite Maxnomic chair. Taco's on the desk with me once again as we jump into the Dragons versus the Leviathans here for set number 2. And these two teams are tied right now for third. This is a pretty important fight for them.
Battle for the real third place. And that's going to come down to the Jade Dragons and the Atlantis Leviathans. I think this is also a great opportunity as well for the Atlantis Leviathans. They've had a little bit of time now with Zapman being added to this roster. Jade Dragons, on the other hand, they've certainly been looking like a pretty monstrous team to deal with recently. And two powerhouses getting to go at it, Gore. I don't think it gets much better than that.
Well, the thing I think that has been the talk of the town with the Leviathans has been the role swaps that has come from Hardcore, as well as the fact that Zapman has joined this roster. And we've done a lot of talking about Zap and what he brings to this team. They talk a lot about the veteranship and the nature that he is able to bring in order to help guide this team in-game. But the conversation specifically about solo has been an interesting one because Hardcore had straight up said, I think last week that he needed to grind more solo lane because he wasn't doing enough. And for those of you who are maybe not familiar with the Leviathans, it is ridiculous to think about any of these players grinding more Smite than they already do. But it seems like he's started to get his feet under him last week. He's gone for the Kukulkan more often than not, but they've looked good.
Even though it was originally a role that Arcora has played in the past, Gore, it does take some time to ramp things back up, especially when you're dealing with it at the highest premier level of play, the competitive league, that is Smite Pro League, and today's opposition is no different. FineOK even being heavily regarded, I think, as one of the best, if not the best at times. Depends on who you ask, really, as far as solo lane opinions are concerned, but I definitely think that this is a time for Yorkor to showcase that it's not a fluke, it's not a happenstance. He knows what he's doing, and it doesn't necessarily have to come from the Kukulkan, because if the Jade Dragons have been watching any of these Leviathan sets, Gore, it's either they've drafted up a plan to deal with the Kukulkan, or they're just going to take it away from him outright.
I'm just excited to continue watching it. It feels like it's a weird circumstance where you get to see growth back into a role. Like, you can see, okay, I'm familiar with this. Like, I've played this before. I know what I'm doing. But also, okay, man, this is a little fresh. Like, the meta has shifted. Some of the items have shifted. Made things very fun. They didn't lose a single game last week. But he had played, you had even mentioned it, like, not just the Kukulkan had played the Bologna. I believe he had pulled out the Osiris. That might have been for the jungle. Either way, it shows the versatility for their team, which, when you're playing against someone like FineOK and the Dragons in general, that's big for you.
And I think that we've been seeing so much of FineOK's influence, where he's been trying to basically force his way into these earlier teamfight engagements, force his way through rotations, and I'd expect that Yorkor is definitely taking note of that, and he's someone that I could very similarly see having that kind of flow.
Well, we've got the man of the hour himself standing by for an interview. And I guess realistically, Hardcore, to keep it on topic, I mean, what's the feel now? You know, it's been a couple of weeks since you've made the swap. How's it feel being back in solo lane?
I think I'm having like more fun. I always enjoy playing the game a lot. So like right now it's just grinding again, and there is like a new thing. There is a few old that you already know, and then you're having fun. I think that's it.
Well, hey, it sounds good to be comfortable, right? I think over the last week into media day into now, we've gotten like little snapshots of how you feel about solo lane, and it's just nothing but more fun each time. And you guys are in a unique position here because you're not only having to go up against a challenging team, but you're fighting for third place against the Dragons. Whoever wins gets that crown. How do you feel this set's going to go from your team?
There is more. There is so much more in the line just than that third place right now. But I think we're gonna try to pull it off and just hope for the 2-0 or a 2-1 for us.
I think what you're saying is actually really important. It's not just, can you get this set and be third place? There's playoffs coming up soon. I know that you guys have had a little bit of forethought towards that with Zap coming in. Is that kind of what your mind is on right now? Not just winning this set, but looking ahead towards the Phase 2 end?
Yeah. Yeah, something like that.
Well, hopefully you've got the future figured out for you, or at least you're going to figure it out relatively soon. Good luck in your games, man, and thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm always excited to see what they have to offer. These guys, because they came in, they did the media day on Monday. For those of you who tuned in, those videos will probably be going up on the Smite Pro YouTube channel over the next week and a half. And they seem just so relaxed with each other. Like Zap hanging out with them, it just fits so well together. And that has been, at least every time I spend time with the Bolts, but anytime you spend time with most of the Dragons, that is usually the key to success outside a game.
Yeah, the public can oftentimes, I think, be a little bit critical, but there's more than meets the eye oftentimes with the roster swaps and things like that we see taking place behind the scenes. I think that the main thing that I've been seeing the Leviathans note is the fact that Zapman introduces this nice factor of that late game period for as far as shot calling is concerned. I think that Zap has so much experience in that regard that it works nicely with the rest of the Leviathans roster, and it is that air of relaxation that I think Zap can definitely introduce to this squad, because at times I think when the sets matter most, Leviathans can seem a little bit tense, but I think that Zap's going to be great for helping them to kind of relieve that pressure.
And Zap's going to have to deal with Panda Cat. That is its own beast to have to tackle for him, but Hardcore is going to have to go up against FineOK. Not realistically an easy matchup by any means. I think maybe one of the most interesting solo lanes that we could see. FineOK has brought a ton to this table, and as much as we were saying, okay, we've seen a few gods from Yarkor over the last couple of weeks, the FineOK will play damn near anything he can over in the solo lane, Taco.
I think it's more so coming down to whether or not Yarkor is going to be able to force FineOK to remain in the lane with him, because Fino has just been having such a huge impact for this Dragons roster by forcing his way into the conversation, forcing his way into the team fight. He's not someone that's just content with just farming it out any longer in the solo lane. He wants to be that heavy rotational impact factor, and if the Leviathans aren't careful, I think that Fino's more than certainly going to be trying to make his presence known in the face of Shinto.
I think fun to look at this. First off, seeing a lot of Bologna highlights from FineOK, considering she hasn't been out, but now with the Cullen, who has been pulled up for both of these players a little more often, they both have an 80% win rate with Kukulin over this phase. But again, FineOK is not leaving anything to chance. He's pulled out things like the Zhang Hui. He is really, it showcased that he is willing to play whatever the team needs, and like you said, to get involved, to be more, I guess, in the center of the action, whereas you're going to get more standard play, potentially, from the Leviathans. We'll see, I guess, if that comes into phase, if this Kukulin that I keep going back to for whatever reason is going to end up coming through. Somebody, if they do play him, is either gaining on the other and beating that 80% or losing their 80% win rate and falling behind. And either way, it makes things a lot more interesting, because the draft here, we've talked about it a lot with the Leviathans. 90% of the time, they're just going to go down the tier list and say, this is what's available, let's pick it.
And I think that, on the other hand, we have the Jade Dragons, who are a team that doesn't necessarily like taking the easy route by any means, Gore. We see some of the craziest compositions, really, from this Jade Dragons roster, and at times it can certainly work against them, because when you complicate the game for yourself by going for those heavy, high execution compositions time and time again, yes, individually speaking, of course, I think every member on this Jade Dragons roster is more than capable of succeeding with those high execution drafts, but I guess a team like the Leviathans having any sort of slip up could definitely lead to catastrophe, because this is a Leviathan squad where, even more so with Zapman being added into this roster, that's going to be able to punish to the fullest extent.
Most of the bans against the Dragons are not the picks you would expect. For most teams right now, Artemis, Yamoja, I guess in Phase 2, Artemis might be lagging a little behind because she kind of came up a few weeks in. But, your Yamojas, your Fafnirs, things like that are the go-to bans against most of these teams. Your Tiamat typically focuses up there as well. The Dragons, their top bans are against them, I should say, are Mercury, Fenrir, Odin. And that, in and of itself, I think showcases exactly what you were saying. They do not typically play what everybody else is, and they play them so well to the point where you have to change your strategy, sometimes give them something that is meta in order to conform and deal with what they have been picking outside of that. They are going to be first pick here as the Dragons. And that just opens up a whole can of worms. You don't want Heroine to have Tiamat. You don't want Heroine to have Yanis, although that one's been a little more acceptable lately. You don't want PBM to have anything, admittedly, but you really have to narrow down a lot of picks here if you're the Leviathans.
Given some of the more popular mid laners as of late, Raijin, Sol, Tiamat, Morgan Le Fay, I can definitely see the reasoning as to why that Giannis has fallen a little bit more to the wayside here, but Leviathans being in that second pick position, and the Jade Dragons, they look as though they're trying to leverage a solid frontline component for themselves early on as they take shots towards some of these more flexible picks and more of the burst damage as well. Gilgamesh, Raijin, those are going to be immediate knockouts here for the Jade Dragons. Wondering if Yamoja ends up joining the ranks there, unless it's Jade Dragons intending to pick that for themselves.
That's a very powerful pick that could potentially come onto the side of the Dragons. It's also a little worrisome because if they do, I mean, at this point, you know, Odin now being banned, so Tiamat, Morgan Le Fay still available, as you had highlighted, Yamoja still available right now. And if the Dragons go for anything that's not Yamoja, if the Leviathans had let it through, that's a scary pick to let wrong. You have as well. I think they don't want to hedge their bets, though, and hope they get the other pick. They're just going to ban it out and make sure the Dragons don't have it.
Very interesting to note, though, that it's going to be a Fafnir above all else here, Gore. Morgan, Tiamat, both up for grabs. Wouldn't expect the Leviathans to lock in both of those simultaneously.
We saw that once last week.
I was going to say, though, at least one. And it seems as though Morgan Le Fay is going to be the preference here for Shinto in the mid lane. Maybe I'm like setting myself up for disaster here by assuming that it's Morgan Le Fay in mid. I just can't really see Yorkor wanting to prioritize that anywhere else. The Osiris, on the other hand, a nice flexibility option here. Could be for jungle, could be for solo. Would never anticipate it for support, however. Definitely want to see Drongyu stick to a little bit more of that frontline emphasis.
And this is another pick that we were kind of surprised by. It goes 10th overall there in game number 1 of the Oni Warriors versus the Valkyries. Doesn't get picked up, or if I remember correctly, not even banned out in game 2. Ducky had just such a great game on this pick. We saw him, I think, as one of the top picks overall last week. And so Osiris going up in the top isn't surprising. Maybe the lack thereof this Osiris today has been a little bit, but he does show his face here, the man of the hour, Kakullen. So now all those talking points I mentioned about him make me feel better because he has actually showed up. 80% win rate here for FineOK on this pick. And they get the Tiamat. Look, this is a Tiamat 5th pick in this game. That is ridiculous to me, Taco.
Smart of the Jade Dragons, though, to prioritize an aggressive solo lane pick just in case that Osiris is intended for the solo lane. You don't want FineOK having to play on the back foot here automatically just because of the God matchups alone. But with the Kakullen, he can still look to be aggressive through that solo lane. He can still look for that rotational impact that I mentioned earlier that we've been seeing so much out of him as of late. And it's just wonderful CC setup in general. Knockups are, without a doubt, the best form of crowd control in Smite, and that's why it comes as no surprise, really, to see the Leviathans prioritizing 2 of them as well.
Yeah, getting another one here with the Erlong Shin. That turtle form, nice shell that you can get alongside that. But also the taunt power, and makes me think, I mean, I think we've seen this go both ways. We've seen Erlong Shin solo with Osiris jungle, and vice versa, Erlong Shin jungle with Osiris solo. But it feels... I want to say it feels like a hardcore Osiris, but honestly, Taco, I feel like it's a coin flip.
I think it would be better for the Osiris to be in that solo lane matchup as opposed to the Erlong Shen. Erlong could definitely struggle a little bit, I would imagine, up against the likes of that Kakullen. Not only that, but I feel as though Erlong having that taunt available because of a jungle pressure, that it would be a lot more beneficial for a Morgan Le Fay as opposed to just having that Lord of the Afterlife to rely on for that CC setup and initiation. I also think that Erlong's much better faring against a Fafnir in that jungle versus support matchup. It definitely at least poses an issue or enough of a threat against Mike on that Fafnir where he's not going to be able to just jump in recklessly.
Make sure he has to be cautious, right? He can't just necessarily jump in, like you said, recklessly, which I think is a wonderful term for it. The jungle is the target for the Leviathans. Serket and Mercury banned out there. Up on the other side, though, Terra and Rom getting banned out, with no hunters picked up as of yet. Heimdall gets locked in here for Zapman. It has been a comfort pick. I don't know what it is now. I know a few weeks ago it was something like a 60% win rate for him. He's loved this pick over the last year and a half. And they're hovering Izanami on the other side, Taco. I mean, Heimdall, we've kind of gotten used to. He's just going to be hanging around. Izanami's been, like, flirting with the meta, but she's not actually in a committed relationship with the meta yet.
I think the primary hunter that we've been seeing rocking the Izanami, largely Cyclone Spin's the first one that comes to mind, and I think the main preference towards Iza is that she's one of the few remaining hunters right now that has a strong attack speed steroid to really utilize that bow build aspect. Not only that, but I think that Iza versus Heimdall in the 1v1 specifically could be a little bit problematic here, though.
It's going to be fun to watch. I mean, she brings a big silence to any fight she's in, which is going to be fun, both with semi-reliable getaways. I mean, Heimdall we've seen get caught out in the crystal. Same thing we've watched Izanami. You can look, that dash is going one direction. They are invisible, though, and that tends to help. Nike locked in for the final pick here for the Dragons, which is going to finalize that, probably going into the jungle here for Sam.
I would expect this to be a Nike jungle for Sam for Soccer, yes. I think that the Jade Dragons' overall composition is just a lot of precision-based burst, and I love the fact that they have this Izanami because that silence on her ultimate could be crucial in terms of preventing a lot of the counter initiation from the Leviathan, so really want to keep an eye on Panicat here and how he chooses to utilize that.
If I had to describe the Leviathan's playstyle in like just one general sweeping statement, though, it's usually frontline setup to backline carry. That's what this team screams to me. I mean, like, Heimdall is not, like, he's going to just be sitting comfortably. Same thing with Morgan Le Fay, comfortably in the back with a taunt in front of them, slows in front of them, and a pluck in front of them. Like, this feels like it is set up to just funnel kills to Zap and Shinto.
Yeah, not only that, but I think that Zapman having that through the realms as well with the Heimdall ultimate is going to be very important, at least for preventing Sam, Mike, even Finoke from just trying to immediately collapse him, because there is a ton of dive potential, I think, from this Jade Dragons composition. It's certainly a lot to handle as well when you're dealing with constant applications of burst damage and crowd control, but at the same time, it's not to say that the Leviathans don't have the peel allotted to deal with it. Sobek, Ulralong, Osiris probably the more weak aspect in terms of peel, but Osiris makes up for it by the dive potential.
Well, and Morgan Le Fay having some version of her own peel, self-peel, to help keep her alive. But it does kind of bring back to the conversation, like, it's so weird to see her because she's just in the middle of the screen, not the top, but the Tiamat that is going up against that Morgan Le Fay. The conversation over the last, couple of weeks has been about Tiamat or Morgan, who's necessarily, like, number one. A lot of people were saying Tiamat's still better, but Morgan Le Fay is definitely going to be up there and rivaling that as a contest, and then they're just leagues ahead the next mage that you're going to be able to get. But is Herwind going to be able to get as much done here for the team, or is he just kind of a facilitator to help somebody else?
If I'm speaking off of personal bias alone here, Gore, I'm personally on the side of Tiamat, then Morgan, every single time. Like, I think that it's actually a little bit criminal that the Jade Dragons got this Tiamat, but Morgan Le Fay for Leviathan should be a fun one.
We'll see if Hurry can commit any crimes with this one, or if it's going to be Shinto who's finding a lot of kills. We'll go down to Dave and Aggro for this game.
Thank you, Gore. Thank you, Taco. It's time to kick off one of two games of the week that we've got here. Jade Dragons versus the Leviathans. Dolson, Aggro, and Doug will be bringing it to you. And Aggro, this is a big one for both of these teams. We've talked a lot about how the Leviathans have been on a bit of a resurgence here. They drop back-to-back 3-game sets against top teams, and then they start to find some wins. Zapman's been looking good with this team. And the Jade Dragons have seemingly gotten their feet back under themselves. Big heat check for both sides.
Man, I can't wait for this game. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. And already the way that these two teams drafted coming in shows that they're coming in guns blazing. Because to trade Tiamat Morgan Le Fay is always something that's really interesting to watch. And clearly Shinto decides that he thinks Morgan's a little bit better. If you tuned into Content Day, then maybe you would have noticed that he said he thinks Morgan's a little bit better than Tiamat. And I wonder if the Jade Dragons knew this was coming and how this draft was going to play out. because this seems to be the pick for the Leviathans mid laner right now. Yep, I think the mid lane is going to be a pretty key one in this tough matchup.
And Morgan Le Fay Tiamat, a matchup I think we'll have to start getting a little bit more used to here. The duo lane, man, a lot of storylines to follow along with here. PBM and Rongyu have stepped forward as two of the more premier aggressive supports in this league, setting up for the rest of their team. Now surrounded by a great pair of hunters there as well. Wondered what we would see there. Sanford Soccer on this Nike. Maybe a chance to find some damage early, but the Oracles will be left on over the Dragons.
Yeah, I think the Dragons were trying to set the bait on that Oracles to pretend like they were doing them, but there's a big audio cue whenever you pull those Oracles and they start to channel, and because Panatom didn't hear that, and he didn't hear the Tiamat one charging up and all those audio cues, I think he kind of sniffs out that trap the Jade Dragons had set. Maybe they needed to pull it and just try and get them to come in and commit a little bit earlier. But I'm not sure that the Dragons really win that 2v2 super hard. Erlong is really, really good at that point in the game. And Nike, well, I'm not really sure what point of the game she's best at.
Pluck onto Panda Cat, burns the beads. Now Rongyu will get hammered by PBM. Some damage from Panda Cat finds its way in, but Zapman has continued to trade out with the Jade Dragons Hunt. Around the backside is Panatom here. Could be a pin. Have to look out for the next 150 seconds if you're Panda Cat on this Izanami. No beads, but some escapability. Likely a purple buff going over to the Leviathans.
With the Hunter's Cowl start, you're just not going to get enough sort of damage in order to really get in a good position. As Heroin now loses his beads as well, so that's 2 carries on the Jade Dragons that don't have CC immunity available.
I said purple buff, but instead it's red buff. Invaded PBM, takes it away. And so at least defends his red buff. Little guys, I think, went over to the Leviathans. But buff down there in the mid lane for the Jade Dragons. Maybe a chase here. PBM thinking twice of it. He'll go on back towards his lane here, and Panda Cat will pick up this purple buff. What do we think about the Izanami here? Look, Zapman loves this Heimdall pick, and so I think we've seen enough data to know that can work. I feel like Iza's been, Panda Cat and maybe Cyclone once, if I'm remembering correctly. Maybe works with the bow build.
Yeah, those two in particular. Look, it's really just the fact that we're going in to a meta with where bows are the meta. You know, you're going Silver Branch, you're going Atalantas, you're going Ichaival, and Izanami 1 is, for my money, the best steroid in the game. It's like 70% attack speed for 5 seconds or something really, really long when it comes to attack speed steroids. It's really her and Artemis that compete for best attack speed steroid in the game. And who's the best hunter in the game right now, Dave?
That'd be Artemis.
That'd be Artemis,
yeah.
Right. So that's not any sort of coincidence. Yeah, it's it's 6 seconds and 75% attack speed, so even better than I thought. So when you got Silver Branch Bow, and you already are going to be dealing a lot of damage, you've already capped your attack speed, now Izanami 1 gives you some more value. And that's the thing with, like, let's take a look at Rom's attack speed steroid, where it doesn't actually, once you get Silver Branch, it's just a power stem. That's all it becomes. It doesn't have any other additional effects. Whereas Izanami, it changes her auto so that they don't pierce anymore, so that they're more single target, and it adds flat damage on top of that, and it's longer and more attack speed than Rom,
right?
In his steroid. And you look at someone like Artemis, her attack speed steroid, a little bit longer duration, and gives her movement speed and slow immunity. So it's not just characters that have attack speed stims that are good with this type of meta build, but it's characters that I still get paid on, even when I'm already capped attack speed, and I'm not just getting power whenever I press my steroid. I want power from my Silver Branch and an additional effect. And that's where Izanami and Artemis start to separate themselves from other hunters.
Why do you think Iza's kind of fallen down the list then? I mean, we've seen her, again, a couple of times.
Yep.
Not held in the same regard, though, as the Artemis. And it's for all those reasons and more, you'd think she might see more play.
It's really the fact that the difference between Izanami ult and Artemis ult in a team fight is massive. You know, Dark Portal is really good for single target damage. It's got great scaling. That silence is strong. It comes out fairly quick these days. It's not super hard to land. It's a good ultimate.
Yep.
But Caledonian Boar just does so much work in team fights. It is one of the best team fighting ultimates in the entire game, no doubt in my mind. You can't miss it. It's guaranteed stunning 3 to 4 to 5 people a team fight. So, and it's CC immunity on top of that.
Yep.
So the fact that Izanami doesn't have that built-in CC immunity, and her ultimate is worse when it comes to the team fighting phase, those are the reasons why Artemis is better. But when Artemis is taken off the board, I think Izanami is one of the better hunters in this meta. I'm surprised that it's really only Panda Cat and Cyclone's been playing her.
And Artemis is officially the first god I've ever gotten a pentakill on. As of this
Ooh,
last week,
I forgot to watch your pentakill,
I
Dave.
got
I'm
a penta
sorry.
on Artemis. There's a gank happening to Fine OK here. 9 turns blessing used by Panatom. Big double knockup secures his escape. And Panatom just wasting a little bit of time over here on the right side of the map. Level 8 Cocoon could be difficult to find enough damage there. Likely would have been enough if Fine OK didn't play it as well as he did. So, Panatom, Leviathans, and the Jade Dragon still searching for that first play.
I mean, it's a good idea to gank over there in solo. You know that Fine OK did back fairly recently in order to get that Steel Mail 1. So he doesn't have... So getting him low at this point is more efficient than someone ganking, say, your core, who clearly has not backed yet.
Jump in from Sanford Soccer just to secure the Forp on the left side of the map. Jade Dragons will pick that one up.
Dave, this is pretty embarrassing for you. That's
That's Gorp, you're right.
Yeah, that's Gorp.
Well, I'm thinking Forp like Fury Scorpion. So that's
No, it's Fire Scorpion. And
Are we
Gold
too
Scorpion.
long into the year to change that at this point?
Not only can we not change it, we can't change it to the exact opposite of what it used to be.
Yeah,
That's
you're right.
the most confusing.
You're right. That's
option.
on me. That's my fault. I
Come on, Dave.
went with the incorrect choice out of
This is our one
possible
of
thing.
one of our games of the week.
I know that's on me. That's on me. My fault.
Step it up,
Panatom, he's looking by the blue buff here. But PBM knows that he's close by. Sanford Soccer does as well. But the old transformation will get him out and alive. So defense spent now by the Jade Dragons by that blue buff. Zapman feeling confident enough to solo invade this purple. This would be some fun if we got to see a 1v1 here. Both hunters have their beads ready to go. But Zapman not knowing where the rest of the Dragons are, considering backing away, and that'll let Panda Cat get enough damage in onto the purple. There was a hint of a rotation there from Hurrywind, but ultimately didn't commit.
Just ended up being the mid-harpies instead. But good communication coming from Leviathans. Clearly, their comms working pretty well. And that's a thing that we're going to still see to develop for this team. I don't think that it's fair to expect that this be the final form of the Leviathans. Despite Zap's status as a veteran in this league and how long he's been around and been so successful, joining in with a new team, especially one that is well-oiled as the Leviathans, it's going to take time before this team is really hitting their final form. And we've seen teams in the past. I was on SPL Rundown with APAM and with Anatoly and with Cardiac, and Anatoly brought up a really good point that numerous world champions have made roster changes right around this time of year.
Yep.
You look back at Season 4, there was a roster change there for that E United squad. They picked up Venenu and lost when they lost Chaos in the mid lane. You look at Season 5 and Splice, they got Moswall in mid instead of the best. Right around this time of year for both of those changes. So with that in mind, it kind of gives you a good idea of how these trajectories often go. That E United team was immediately one of the favorites, but that Splice team was not. That Splice team still took some time. They were one of the better teams in North America, but I don't think anyone thought they were going to dominate that World Championship in the way that they did. So certainly something to watch out for this Leviathans team is how they continue to mature with Zap joining them on the roster.
Is that an early prediction from you, Ika?
No, sir. I'm not in the business of making predictions, Dave.
No, it's probably a smart business to stay out of here. Or where First Blood is coming from. I can't predict that at this point. Panatom has made some effort here, but he's fallen behind by 2 levels to Sanford Soccer on this Nike. So might come there, might come here in the mid lane. Wrong, you jumped on Panatom in the back line, though, with a big taunt in Sanford Soccer. He goes down first. Some peel from the Leviathans, turns that one around, and First Blood to the Levies.
I like the idea there from the Dragon. Sam comes up and over, and he's trying to use his shield to push back Rongyu to keep that CC chain going. But Rongyu just gets into his ultimate a little bit too quickly, and then Sam doesn't have the time in order to deploy the shield afterwards. If that shield had gone off, Sam is likely going to be okay because Rongyu was in his ult, couldn't turn and sunder. But as it stood, it ended up being not the cleanest CC chain. It was a difficult one to execute on. They needed to time it perfectly if they want to lock down the Sobek, and maybe it's just target selection there, the problem for the Jade Dragons more than anything else.
Purple buff invade looked at by the Jade Dragons. BBM might throw a hammer in just see what he can get done, but it won't be committed to any more than that. Rongyu actually plucks PBM off to the side. Won't secure the purple buff away there. So now you get this First Blood over onto Panatom, which is great because going into that fight, Sanford Soccer was level 9, Panatom was level 7, so 2 levels behind was Panatom, but now able to catch back up. So Ikavale early on the Erlang Shen, you've also got it on Zapman, could have the makings for some early objective shred on the left side of the map if the Dragons aren't cognizant of maybe what's going on in that Fury pit.
Definitely think the Leviathans are better on the objective burn. You've got an Erlang Shen and a Heimdall that both have Echo Ball, as you just mentioned, and you have an Assault laner that can contribute a little bit of more damage than the Osiris as well. Not massively so, but I think somewhat so. The real difference is that Tiamat is not great around objectives. She doesn't burn it particularly well. She doesn't secure it particularly well. And at least the Leviathans have one of those two things going for them should they show up around these objectives. The one difference that I will say is that as good as Heim can be, and Zap is going for Rage right away, leaning into this crit so that he can try and get some actual objective damage. Izanami, no matter what build she goes, even with the bow build, does very well around these objectives. She does them very, very quickly. So that would be the difference, is the Dragons need to rely more on Panda Cat and what he can bring whenever it comes to these objectives, whereas the Leviathans, their objective DPS is much more spread out and overall probably slightly better.
And a little burst secure from Panda Cat with the ultimate, if necessary.
Yeah.
Around the objective, something
Probably
that maybe
is the
sets
best
him
secure.
apart from Zapman on that Heimdall. Been quiet over here in the solo lane since Panatom made his way over earlier on in this game. Osiris has really started to skyrocket, hasn't he? Looking at these two solo laners. Cullen, kind of been there, done that here in Season 8, no surprise. Feels like recently, though, this Osiris has really started to increase that pick rate and find pretty good value. Not only in the solo lane aggro, I mean jungle as well. I've seen plenty of Osiris play.
Plenty of top pick Osiris jungles that have ended up not doing a whole lot.
That is
but
true.
I don't know. I think Osiris is really good. I'm not upset about teams picking him very early because of his flex pick potential.
You don't sound sold.
I kind of like him more in solo. I don't know. I love playing Osiris jungle. I think it's super fun. And when it gets ahead, it feels really strong. But junglers just aren't getting ahead these days. Look at the levels in this one.
Oh, it's going to be tough for Sam. Will leap away, but immediately followed by Yarkor. Axe connects, and Sam uses that ultimate, so that's now down as the Pyromancer pulled by the Leviathans. Hurrywind alone between Yarkor and Rongyu. Will the T-Mac get out? Oh, there's a stun on the other end, and Hurrywind still surviving on for a little bit longer. That's about time for Sanford Soccer to jump in, and this fight has been turned around. Sanford Soccer on the board.
Man, I thought Hurry was just dead to rights, but Rongyu and Yarkor just didn't have quite enough damage. If they had Lord of the Afterlife there from Yarkor, it certainly would have been enough, but Tiamat, not as tanky as she used to be, still tanky enough in order to survive that one. Just think that overall, the way that the Leviathans are pacing the map, even though they lose that 1-for-0 and they let the Dragons get on the board, Leviathan still got the Pyromancer. They're still the ones being much more aggressive. I'm liking what I'm seeing from them so far. I like the way they're playing the map.
1,500 gold ahead are the Atlantis Leviathans, so First Blood helping there, but also farming. Might close up a little bit here with Final K taking down the Tier 1 tower on the right-hand side. Sanford Soccer now has turned around his earlier blunder, fell for First Blood, has now picked up a kill for his team. Brawler's Beat Stick and a serrated edge on the Nike. Damage appears to be on the mind for the Jade Dragons jungler.
Yeah, I'm very surprised that's serrated, but with the mannequins as well, I mean, Nike, not thought of as auto-attack based, but I don't think you need to get perfect value out of serrated edge to have it be a pretty good option for you. I still think I would prefer Titans if I were in Sam's shoes, because a big Blink ultimate, getting that extra pen from Titans, or using my Ren to poke with extra damage from Titans would feel pretty good, but just think of it as a 20% pen.
This is a big one here, 14 minutes in, Gold Fury pulled, taken very low by the Jade Dragons, but the Leviathans are close by, and the Leviathans steal it away, and now they try to retreat as the Jade Dragons push this advantage forward. Rongyu low. Sanford Soccer doesn't get the knock-up onto Panatom, who had to use the beads. The roar doesn't connect either, but a blink on it might close the gap, and it sure does.
Finally, they get him a good hammer from Mike, set that one up, and Final K is able to clean it up. That's excellent secure. Not there because Shinto stole it away, but now they're going to chase him down.
There's a stun onto Shinto. The knock-up is there. Oh, a great fear from Shinto, but it appears to just buy him some time, and Hurrywind rounds the corner and knocks the final pin down. So the Leviathans lose 2, but they grab the Fury, and that's still enough aggro to keep this 2,000 gold lead in the Leviathans' corner.
That should be not too bad for the Leviathans, but the Dragons are going to come out on top. Even though the Leviathans ended up getting the Fury away, they lose 2 members that now can't farm for a period of time, and they lose their Tier 1 tower in mid. So even though this gold and experience on the teamfight recap looks like it's Leviathan's favorite right now, because it is, I think when you factor in the Tier 1 tower, you factor in the time spent farming for the players on the Dragons that don't get to farm for the Leviathans, it becomes a little bit more Jade Dragons favored. But certainly if you're the Dragons, you would have liked to secure that one. Like you said, Panda Cat's ultimate is probably the best in the game in order to secure it, at least in this match, I should say. it ends up being a little bit mistimed. That is not, that's something that you have to practice as a player, is securing objectives. Panda used to be a mid laner, played mid lane last year, so he is familiar with that type of responsibility. Just ended up not having it there on that one.
I was going to say, I wonder how many hunters are in that position. I mean, Aniza, the name definitely gets called, but so often those big, secure burst abilities are out of the mid lane. But good point there. Panda Cat has some experience with that. Just shy, though. Shinto able to deal the final bit of damage, and that keeps that fight from going completely in the wrong directions. If the Leviathans don't at least get the Gold Fury, the Jade Dragons have a massive swing here in this game. And there is a swing that happened as the gold gap is closed by about 1,000 over the last couple seconds of us talking about it. But definitely could have been a lot worse. So, Panda Cat at 0-0-2. We'll continue to scale up here in this game, Aggro, and the ease of scaling, I think, is something we always talk about when this god gets locked in. Zatman, though, will have plenty of scaling on his own, has that rage, looks like some crit item to round out the build there towards the end. So really both of these hunters are going to be big threats in the late game.
It looks like it's going to be a spectral armor for Sam in order to try and get rid of it.
Go.
Yeah, it is. So this makes some sense to me overall. With how the meta is for junglers, I was talking earlier about how they're less impactful than they used to be. I think this makes sense.
Hurrywin plucked back into the awaiting arms of the Leviathans. He'll use the Aegis and the beads to survive. Shinto's used the ultimate here. PBM tosses out the Sunder, connects onto Shinto as well. There's a transformation. Sam for Soccer spreads out the slowing, and Hurrywin deals the Kona damage to put Shinto down for the second time this game. Rongyu will have to lurk in the waters here. Frenzy used on the other side of this fight as well, but it looks like the Dragons don't have the legs.
Not quite. Rongyu tanky enough with that Spirit Robe, but still, that's a great aggression from the Jade Dragons in the mid lane, because Shinto's relics were still down after he used them in mid a little bit earlier.
Man, bit of a bait and switch from the Jade Dragons there. Hurrywin does have to use both actives, but he will gladly take that. Now 2-0-2 on the Tiamat. The last Pyromancer went to the Leviathans. This one looking like comfortably for the Jade Dragons. And this game brought right back to even. It only felt like a matter of time, didn't it? You talked about the fallout from that Gold Fury fight. It's finally come to fruition here. A kill onto Shinto as well. This Morgan Le Fay has fallen a couple of times, hasn't been able to fully be comfortable yet. Now the Jade Dragons regain control of the match with a slight gold lead.
They're in good position, but they have to be wary of where Hurrywin is now, because he's in the exact same position that Shinto was just in, where he has no relics, and he has to be very careful because of it, especially with an Erlong with Blink on the other side, a Sobek. Those are gods you really have to respect as a mid laner if you don't have on-demand CC immunity, which even though Tiamat does have CC immunity in the kit, I wouldn't call it on-demand. You know, when I'm talking about on-demand, I'm thinking Discordia ultimate, someone blinks on me, I can instantly hit this long duration CC immunity, or Scylla ultimate, something like that where I can keep it for as long as I'd like. Those are much better in situations like this, and Tiamat just doesn't have that available to her. But with that being said, as soon as Hurrywin's relics come back up, I want to see the Dragons continue to be aggressive, because they have a lead in the jungle. That's really the only tangible lead in this game, is Sam's up about a level and a half over Panatom. Let's get him involved before Panatom catches up in XP.
Important to look at, you mentioned Spectral Armor for Sam at the beginning of that conversation. Finoke has picked one up for himself now as well. So Zatman's going to, as often as you can, pick targets as a hunter, as tough as that can be sometimes. Zatman, unfortunately, might not get the choice, because Finoke and Sam are going to be the ones jumping on to this crit build Heimdall. Oni Fury respawns here. Jade Dragons have already gotten the Oracles, cleared out some of the ward coverage, but the Leviathan's close enough by to maybe have something to say about it. We're at the point in the game now, Aggro, where this gold lead is effectively, 500 or so, so maybe not something the Leviathans want to just give up for free, but the Jade Dragon started up. Coerce will make its way out in an AoE fashion for PBM. Frenzy is there as well, and the Leviathans have no chance to answer.
Good attempt there from Panatom. He blinked in, tossed the pin, but was just slightly too late. I was surprised that Mike popped a Frenzy, but it ended up being the difference maker in making sure that they got it. I wonder if they want to try and force this fight. I can't imagine they do with Mike's Frenzy on cooldown.
But the beads and Aegis for Hurrywin have come back up. You mentioned that's maybe around the time we'll see something happen for the Jade Dragons. Mike tossed out a stun. Rongyu used lurking in the waters. And so that's something now Rongyu has to be wary of. A pluck misses, and usually lurking in the waters is your get out of jail free card, but won't have that. And we're 20 minutes in. We've already seen how fast these teams can burn these objectives if you die around it. The other team's got a real easy look at the FG in the back line. Final case found a knockup. Wrong lives on though. Yarkor, he's got to turn tail off. It's a massive
Panatom.
3-man taunt from Panatom, and he'll pay for it in blood. Jade Dragons, a quick 2 kills.
What an ultimate from Panda Cat. Who cares about securing Gold Fury, Dave? Let me get a 2-man right in the middle of the jungle, and the Jade Dragons are just stomping this fight.
Oh, it's under the tier 2 tower. We go. Hurrywin wants more. Sanford Soccer and PBM do not, so it's immediately back to the FG, you'd assume, for the Jade Dragons. PBM a little bit low, but everyone else feels pretty healthy, feels pretty topped off. Frenzy's going to come up right now. Could get popped if the Jade Dragons feel like they need it. But with only Zapman and Shinto on the map, no real chance, and it's going to be a 21-minute FG to the Jade Dragons.
And look, just a couple minutes ago it was, oh, I really like the pace of Leviathans. You know, they're the ones forcing Pyromancer. They're the ones showing up and trying to take a little bit more buffs. This is what the Jade Dragons, when they're playing well, do very, very well, which is constantly poke and prod at you with these, are you going to be here on time? We're going to do this. What are you doing? Are you here? Are you here? Are your relics up? Are you going to react to this blink engage? They don't, I think they do the best job in the league when they're on of not letting you breathe. That's their real strength as a team. And I think it's been perfectly on display in this game because the pace went from very slow. When was First Blood? 11, like 9 to 11 minutes.
Yeah, it got to the point where I said, who knows when First Blood is going to happen, right?
Right. It was like 9 to 11 minutes. And now in the last 10 minutes, they've gotten the last 7 kills have all gone to the Jade Dragons. And they have started the vast majority of objectives in that time and have not allowed the Leviathans to spread out and farm. And they've been able to continue to farm themselves. Sam now level 18, Final K hits level 20, as does Panda Cat, as does Zapman. Those sorts of pacing plays are very, very difficult to play against. I think some of the hardest things to play against at high level. So that's why when the Jade Dragons are playing well, they look like no one can contest them because they go with this style that's exceptionally hard to play against, even for the best teams in the world.
They've got a good comp to do it. Unfortunately for the Leviathans, this pace looks like it's going to continue here. There's a tier 2 tower in mid that's just going to get taken down. The Leviathans don't have much to say about it. Instead, it's a soft 3 to 5 man grouping, depending on where you want to put Panatom and Yarkor around the left side of the map here. And Gold Fury is going to be up in the next minute or two, so that's something the Jade Dragons can look back towards. Right now, maybe a soft defense from the Leviathans. We'll see how these waves crash in if there's a team fight to be had. Because earlier on, I said, you know, maybe the Leviathans can test. This gold lead isn't that bad. I mean, it's gotten that bad at this point. So you have to pick and choose where you fight. Wrong, you didn't get the opportunity. He gets stunned down, takes about half of his HP just for standing there. And it looks like, Aggro, the Leviathans are at least going to stick around and see if they can find something.
I think you're really seeing the issues whenever your jungler falls behind on an initiation jungler. That Wrong Yu has been left as the lone initiator for the Leviathans, and the Jade Dragons are taking what the Leviathans give them. We'll hit Wrong Yu every fight, but he's not tanky enough to withstand it, so we're just going to put him down to half HP every single time.
Tier 2 tower ends up going quietly. So now the rest of the Jade Dragons walk forward. Wrong, you had to go back to base here. Now it's Yarkor on the front line, being whittled down to half of his HP. There hasn't been that punchback in recent fights here from the Leviathans just yet, and the Jade Dragons have just felt oppressive in their ability to jump into these fights, whether it's Kulkullen, whether it's Sanford Soccer starting things off. I don't think that changes here around this Fury. Maybe a chance, though, for Panatom. You know, you don't have to get in their face because they're going to be getting in yours.
Still, it shouldn't be long with an Izanami with Frenzy before this Phoenix goes down, but there's only about a minute left on this FG. Jade Dragons can't wait forever.
And Sanford Soccer and Final K, they don't want to wait. Frenzy using the backline. Zapman luckily gets saved by a taunt from Panatom here, but look at the revive from the rest of the Jade Dragons. In they go, and Yarkor falls first. Wrong Yu lurks in the waters, and that's enough to save his life. Phoenix still somewhat healthy here. Shinto finds a kill onto Panda Cat for at least one trade.
And Panda had relics too. That's huge. Shinto makes a big play. It won't save this left side Phoenix, I don't think, but maybe it will.
My goodness, the Leviathans have found Cleave, and it's all onto the Jade Dragons. Now Zapman works forward, finds the rest, and Final K falls as well. The Jade Dragons don't get the Phoenix, and they lose 3.
Yeah, it's not often that you start to say, hey, Panda's got to do better there, but Panda's got to do better there, Dave. I mean, you just can't die with both relics up in that position. He was really low. He was dead to 1 Sigil Mastery after all the damage that he took. But at some point, he either had to Aegis all the damage that was coming in that got him that low in the first place, or the simple answer is just Aegis that Sigil Mastery that's coming at you when there was. It's not like there were a whole lot of things happening in the team fight. It was literally just Shinto close enough in order to make that happen. But he makes it happen, and really an individual play from the Leviathans keeps their left side Phoenix up and restores a lot of momentum. Those were their first 3 kills since First Blood.
In about 15 minutes, yep.
And it's only a 4,000 gold deficit. They're going to get Gold Fury. It's going to go to like 2,500. What's the problem? No, if you're the Leviathans. I don't really see one.
And it's important as well, not only does the Phoenix live on, we talk so often about how that first FG sets you up for the second FG, and that second FG kind of ends the game. Yeah, the left side Phoenix is low, but the Leviathans aren't going to have to worry about that. So what's the problem indeed for the Leviathans? Now the Jade Dragons have to kind of regather themselves, you figure, right? I mean, they're still in a strong spot in this game. Panda Cat a bit of a fumble there maybe, as we've talked about under the Phoenix. That doesn't go that way. Maybe the Jade Dragons are still able to get the Phoenix. This is now an important pivot point in the game where the Jade Dragons can check that mental and make sure that things go swimmingly here around this Fire Giant. But as we expect, the Leviathans will show some face. With the way the last couple of things have gone, the Leviathans should show some face. And this one should be a pretty contested FG. Won't be enhanced, though, for the next 3.5 minutes.
Pretty big deal, though, that Mike has been able to grab his starter item upgrade. It's not the Sentinel's Embrace like we used to see all the time. We got a Boon Goon alert, a Sentinel's Boon coming from Polar Bear Mike. And it's more about, this is all about getting your extra gold. You know, you get extra gold, but it also is pretty good sustain. But remember, for Fafnir, he's already getting extra gold. And now on top of that, he gets protections for all the gold in his inventory. Boon is going to keep him stocked, literally, in that department. So if there's a god that can make use of the Sentinel's Boon, it's probably Fafnir.
I think there's a few gods that can make use of Spectral Armor. Mike, the third to pick up Spectral here, so that man is going to have a real tough time. Now, unless he's finding unless you're hitting the carries, you're hitting someone who's got Spectral. PBM transforms. Frenzy ready to go if the Jade Dragons want it. Leviathan's close by, so they're showing their presence around this FG pit, but it's half HP on the big objective. Hurrywin lets a volley of damage fly over. That'll force the Leviathans back for a moment. It's getting low here. Steal potential around the corner. Yarkor jumps in, but he does not steal it away. The Dragons confirm it. Panda Cat, he's found the opening kill, but Shinto flooding into the backline has been able to transform one on over to the Leviathans, but it's a double from Panda Cat. It's one from Hurrywin, and it's Shinto and Zap left alive.
And FinoK blinks in, finds Shinto. Great Dragon Flight in order to keep himself safe from this Kakullan dive. That's still 4 members with the FG, and Sam dies, but he does his job perfectly in that engagement. Just keeps everyone at bay, focus on me, not on the Fire Giant. And instead of a pure coin flip, it's more like a weighted coin there for the Jade Dragons. It was risky, but favored for them, and that's why they're able to secure it.
Oh man, this is going to be difficult. It's Shinto with only Aegis and Zapman with only Aegis for the next 15 seconds. Wrong, you will be back from base. See how the Dragons respond after this Phoenix goes down. They're kind of trending backwards, so it looks like they just want mid and left, and they'll back away. So no end attempt yet from the Jade Dragons, but they are fully juiced up. Everyone but Sanford Soccer's got the Fire Giant. They've got a lot of damage to work in onto a weakened Titan.
And right now, the Leviathan's backline just can't get involved in these fights. I mean, they were able to do some good damage to Sam there off the Sunder, which takes off his shield and makes it really easy to kill him. But like I said, he did his job in that fight. His job is to die in that engagement, and he did that well. Shinto and Zapman being the 2 left alive makes total sense. These are 2 characters that have good self-peel tools, that want to play more solo styles in this backline. And the Leviathan's front line is really all in. You know, Osiris ults in.
Yep.
He's not going anywhere. He's in there now. You've got Panatom, no CC immunity in the kit. Only the beads, and then once he's committed, he's committed. He's not going to be getting out very often. Rongyu has to literally dash in order to get any fight started right now for the Leviathans. And when the Jade Dragons are willing to dump everything into your tanks, it makes the carries that are going to be behind those tanks a lot more terrified, really is the right word. But they understand that they can't step up in order to help off a Sobek pluck. If you're in range to follow up off a Sobek pluck and they're all in committing onto the Sobek, they're in range to hit you right afterwards because he's probably not going to live for very long. So that it makes sense to me why the Leviathan's backline are playing the way they are.
Well, Leviathans commit 2 to pick up the Draugr, but then have to go back to base by the time the Jade Dragons reach the right side Phoenix. Yeah, I don't know if Draugr buff did much there for the Atlantis Leviathans. Going to get taken down swiftly by the Jade Dragons. Here's the good news. Left side wave pushed out. Mid wave now reaching the Leviathans. Only 1 wave to immediately deal with. But you figure you got to take this fight somewhere away from your Titan, maybe, if you don't want that additional assistance from your base, because the Jade Dragon's got a lot of damage.
Shouldn't take too long for that left wave to push up, because Sam's going to grab this one as it spawns. And you don't have a fire wave quite yet coming right. So you've got a minute left on this Fire Giant. This should just be used as time to poke and try and work your way in.
PBM jumps forward, disarms Shinto in the back line there. Wondering if we would see a pluck from Rongyu to put PBM back into an uncomfortable spot. Left wave still inching their way forward. And so now it's, Panatom's got his Blink here in more of a power position than he'd been earlier on in the game. Has the upgraded starter item there as well. We've seen some big taunts kind of slow down the initial engagements in a couple of these fights. Could be a good opportunity for this Erlang Shen to help put up a defense, but now these waves are crashing in. Feels like any moment now the Jade Dragons will press down the gas pedal, and it's PBM transforming that maybe starts off the final fight of the game. Lord of the Afterlife used from Rongyu, or from Yarkor, excuse me. But the big knockup from the rest of the Leviathans. Hurrywind has turned around the damage onto Panatom. Shinto's found one as well. Zapman makes it all the way back to base, and the Jade Dragons don't look convincing just yet.
And Pandacat's dead. I don't know that they have the DPS at this point. They don't have someone to consistently put that damage in. The front line is healthy.
Oh, it's half HP on the Titan. Zapman gets saved for soccer, and there is plenty of damage at the end of the day, and the Jade Dragons, they'll get it done without their ADC.
Yeah, sorry guys. That's on me. I underestimated the damage, and I'll never do it again. I'm very sorry. Look, overall, this was the quintessential Jade Dragons gameplay.
Yep.
We're just going to find one advantage, and we're going to keep pushing on that same pressure point until you break. And that's exactly what happened. But I think that there was something interesting there from the Leviathans. They make a good defense on that left side Phoenix. They step up. They try again on that Fire Giant fight. Still the maturation process for this Leviathans team, but I think if you're a Jade Dragons fan and you saw them looking like Phase 1 Jade Dragons, you're probably feeling pretty good.
Yeah, it's the Dragons we all know and love from Phase 1. They get it done in game number 1. Can they repeat? Stick around and find out for game 2.
All right, guys. Just give me a second. I gotta recenter myself. Curses! Oh. Curses! Curses! My name's Mifflin. My name's Mifflin. My name's Mifflin. Lane, laugh, love. Jordan, I need you to fucking change your face. Jordan, focus! Yeah, I can do that. Think I can't do that? Curses! All of our competitive players can be nearly as stoic, though. What the f, Jordan? Focus! You gotta keep me in there. I've gathered the women like talismans. Hopefully you guys are watching that last clip alone or with headphones on. Rapid fire Migni. I literally speak for a living.
Welcome back, Smite fans. The Dragons, it's a little bit of a long one for them, but they still end up finding their win. You, too, can find your own form of win by finding very comfy clothing, whether it be hoodies, t-shirts, long-sleeve shirts. If you want to rep the SBL, we've got the place for you. Shop.smiteproleague.com for all of your apparel needs for the SBL. You can get your logos. Not right now, but in the past, we've thrown up limited time, let's say, mouse pads that may or may not end up returning into the future, so you got to keep your eye on the website. Of course, there's team jerseys and more. There's also just Pro League jerseys. If you don't know what team you want to rep, you can throw your name on the back of that. And it's all comfortable and all available at shop.smiteproleague.com. Thank you to Inside Apparel for such great merchandise. And thank you to the Dragons and to Taco for such a great game and for what I'm going to assume is about to be great analysis, because the Dragons... Well, they did it for a little bit, then they stopped doing it for a little bit, and then they did it again, and just to make sure that they could seal the deal.
A lot of pressure on me, Gore. Man, I mean,
well, you
I
always are
appreciate
great,
it, but
so.
No, thanks, Gore. But I guess that there really isn't a whole lot to say here, Gore, putting me a little bit on the spot. But the main thing to take note of is the fight that took place right before that main Fire Giant pool. It had been a relatively quiet match between these two teams, very farm-centric focus sort of debut from both sides, but as soon as that initial team fight went down, and then you just see the Jade Dragons, they get the first Fire Giant of the game, they start trying to make their siege, and all hell kind of breaks loose underneath the Leviathans. Phoenixes, Zapman and the team just not willing to let it go easily for the Jade Dragons, and for a second there, it became a little bit questionable as to whether or not we were going to see a Leviathan's comeback, but at the end of the day, Jade Dragons managed to find themselves with a victory in Game 1. However, Gore, the fashion in which they went about it, probably not one that's sitting too comfortable with them in their minds, and I'd imagine that the Jade Dragons are certainly going to look to try and smooth things out here for game number 2 if they want to close the series out.
Yeah, a lot of good control through them, but like you said, there were a couple of key moments. Honestly, even that Fire Giant was just barely in their control. Of course, you ask them, I'm sure they'd say that they had some control on it. Hurry is at 5-0-6.
Never had a doubt.
Yeah, never a doubt. It was calculated. 27,000 damage there for the Tiamat. Looked really, really good. Just a couple thousand damage behind those Shinto there on the Morgan Le Fay. And so both of those making it through once makes me wonder if we'll see them twice. It also makes me wonder how the Leviathans are going to deal with the Dragons, because they took out a lot of Dragon-specific things. They also took out just some great picks in their bans. And the Dragons still were able to run away with it early on. It just feels like a playstyle and a mentality as opposed to the Gods.
And listen, I get it. Aggro even brought it up on the cast right at the very start of Game 1. But if for anybody that missed that Content Monday from the Leviathan squad, they did attest to the fact that they like Morgan more than what they like Tiamat. But on that same note, I don't think that it is beneficial for the Leviathans to continue to let Hurrywin have his god pick of choice. And Hurry, he might even be sick of playing Tiamat at this point, but he's probably not sick of winning. I don't think any competitive player would be. But Tiamat versus Morgan Le Fay, the primary reason why I personally place Tiamat over Morgan is because Tiamat damage is a lot more consistent. I think that Morgan has some very strong utility in her kit. Don't get me wrong. I think that her burst damage is crazy as well. But there's one key difference between the two to know, and damage mitigation. It is so insane to me that a mid-lane mage capable of as much burst damage as a Tiamat simultaneously has a reliable escape. The ability to mitigate tons of damage being shot her way. It's just so much appeal and provides so much flexibility as well in these Jade Dragons compositions that it just makes them very open-ended. Do they need more crowd control? Okay, well, no problem. We can slap it on there with the Tiamat's CC. Do we need more burst damage? Okay, well, sure. Why not add these assets for her Tiamat burst damage? I don't know, Gore. It's crazy to me that Hurry keeps getting Tiamat.
I know he has to be wearing shorts, but it just looked like Sam is preparing to give birth to another win here, right? Like the legs up in stirrups, like that's the only mental image that came to my mind. I'm sorry, chat. You gotta live with it now too.
I thought it was his hand.
Oh, that was his hand?
Just
no,
like
I saw him lean
the
back.
knuckles in the cam, like if he's got his hand like placed forward, I don't know. Yours is definitely a little bit more
graphic.
That's one way to put it, but I think the focus can be brought back in to these picks and bans so far, Leviathans have a pretty big decision to make here, Gore, because as far as the Jade Dragons are concerned, I think they'll trade out Morgan Le Fay for Tiamat every single day of the week.
Yeah, they'd happily do so. So do you ban Tiamat? In which case they could ban out Morgan Le Fay and force you into a different first pick. But with some of these other available picks, I think Odin was banned out by the Dragons last time around, so maybe changing a little bit. Gilgamesh still on the board for these players as well. And that's just a few of the top picks, not even mentioning your Osiris's, your Ymirs, your Fafnirs that we just saw.
The Terras.
Now a lot that is going to be wide open. And Terra ended up getting banned 4th by the Dragons last time. It's the Odin here from the Leviathans, not wanting to first pick it, not wanting the Dragons to have it. And so it's going to stay true. Now the Dragons get to decide the fate of everything.
And the Jade
or the
Dragons, well, they get 2 picks though, Gore, in response to whatever one the
True.
Leviathans opt for. And again, you listed off a lot of really strong candidates as far as first picks are concerned, but I'm honestly more intrigued to see what the response will be from the Jade Dragons, because I do think that there would be some prioritization placed towards that Terra. Almost curious to see if the Leviathans might even opt to lock in a frontliner before worrying about their mage mid lane, and it seems as though Gilgamesh is the primary target here for the Leviathans.
Now, I'm trying to remember which one it was. I think it was Bolts versus Warriors, where, yeah, Aggro had said, like, well, you know, Morgan Le Fay, Tiamat are available. This is where you pick something that you prioritize higher. The Bolts lock in the Osiris. And it's like, you know that they're only going to pick one. This is the opportunity for the Dragons to do the exact same thing, where they just say, no, we'll grab both Tiamat and Morgan Le Fay. But, I mean, we didn't look. Tiamat solo didn't look too hot then, even though I know FineOK has a lot of capabilities. Morgan
on the
solo.
other hand. No, honestly, okay, I'm toying with the idea of it. I wouldn't hate it by any means. I think that FineOK is certainly capable of piloting that god.
How brave are you, FineOK?
But on the other hand, Fafnir, Morgan Le Fay actually going to be the target. And I think the primary reason for this guy, I know I just spent a lot of time gassing up the Tiamat and Hurrywin's gameplay specifically with it, but Morgan Le Fay, the fear and the knock-up, I think, are excellent utility for shutting down a Gilgamesh. And that, I feel, is the primary reason why we see this Morgan being prioritized over the Tiamat.
Oh, and as you had said, and as Aggro had said, they like Morgan more if they're the Leviathan, so the fact that they have to go to Tiamat, even though it is maybe objectively something that is stronger, it's one of those question marks of like, well, do you actually play it at the same level? Shinto's a great mid laner, so there's no reason to cast doubt over that, but how well this Tiamat fits into the Leviathans compared to the Morgan could change a lot.
And this is a personal research moment for me as well, Gore, because the Leviathans win this game and bring us to a Game 3 in this set. I'm going to chalk it up to the Tiamat diff. I'm just throwing that out there right now. You can quote me on it later. I'm not saying that it's in the script for today. You know, I don't actually get access to Papa Hindu's notebook.
He keeps
but
that on lock.
the Morgan Le Fay Tiamat discussion, it's going to be a pretty big focus point here for both of these teams, and that Kakolan being locked in as well for the Leviathans does kind of put the Jade Dragons on the spot. Bologna, I don't think it's necessarily guaranteed as a solo lane pick here. With the way that Sam likes to have a little bit more of an unconventional god pool, I think that there is a possibility for this Bologna to be in the jungle. However, I would definitely lean towards it in solo for Fino.
And it's something that, again, we've been seeing a lot more often. It's odd to me, actually, to see it in the top 3. Not necessarily because I think Bologna's bad, but it's just kind of curious as to what their plan is, and I guess for their counter picks at this point. Because like you said, could technically be in the jungle. Probably not going to be in the jungle, but this gives some flex to Sam and to PandaCat.
I think the main highlight here for Bologna is that Eagles rally, because Winds of Shamash, it provides giant circle AoE of crowd control to a certain extent, but Bologna is going to be able to, I think, cut away at some of that pressure that the Winds of Shamash would have originally been able to provide, because you get all the protections inside of the Eagles rally, and that's not the only stim that you're applying to the team. A lot of team fight counter initiation being brought to the table here by one simple god pick out of the Jade Dragons. And not only that, but the Fafnir as well, I think, can definitely benefit with that Draconic form. Coerce, I think, has a really strong application into the Bologna here in case Jade Dragons want to utilize a more aggressive build.
Well, the bans came through. Taro, you had highlighted it. Terra, I should be very specific. Not Taro. It's not. She's not reading their future. Although she could, if their future is a loss. That's what the Dragons would want. Banned out alongside the Sobek. Mercury, Erlong Shin banned out there from the Leviathans. Thanatos gets locked in here for Sam. And finally, I was kind of wondering if we were going to see it, but Ymir finally makes its way onto somebody's draft. The Leviathans lock that in. But this Thanatos look, and the Bellona to an extent, like that feels very Dragons-centric.
A lot of very strong god picks, though, for both of these teams. And not only that, Gore, but a few staple picks for both sides. I think that this Thanatos is definitely one of the more signature Sam for Soccer picks, but does introduce that factor of feast or famine. And even when we've seen Sam kind of struggling through on the Thanatos, inting off cooldown, doesn't really... honestly, I think it kind of motivates the rest of the Jade Dragons to play better even to a certain extent, because the times where Sam has turbo inted on the Thanatos, the Jade Dragons have had excellent performances to kind of round things out here. But I also just like this looming threat of the Thanatos, that execute going to be extremely detrimental, I think, towards the likes of some of the more immobile gods or the more predictable escape gods like the Ymir, Rom, and Kukulkan.
And you have to look at, I mean, like, Tiamat does a lot of damage, but Tiamat has been a little more survivable for a lot of the mages we've seen. So I see Gilgamesh, Kukulkan, Tiamat, Ymir, like, that's going to be a relatively difficult to kill lineup. So that execute doubles down on that. The Rom comes through this time, was banned alongside that Terra by the Dragons, swaps with the Sobek here. But you had mentioned his stim being incredibly powerful. Izanami as well having a good stim here. And considering Artemis is off the table, they're the ones that get to fight up. How does this matchup go? I mean, ultimately it'd probably just sit around and farm for a little while and then join the fights. But I feel like the Rommel can make some differences.
The Rommel is probably the most exciting factor of this matchup.
It's
because,
the glam.
Well, like, Izanami's escape, yes, it can be nice, but at the same time, it is very predictable where she's going to be headed. It's an extremely telegraphed ability from her, and I think that there is a lot of potential as well for the Astral Barrage to become more of a feature that is kind of meant to just complement the Gilgamesh and Kukulkan's dive, as opposed to being a cleanup association. I think that that's the main thing that Astral Barrage tends to be associated with is, oh yeah, if somebody's low, Astral Barrage, they'll take them out.
Yep.
But you also have to remember, if Zap's hitting all three of those shots, that ability is packing a heavy punch behind it, Gore. I mean, I'm talking a little bit more than 1,000 damage at times if you are precise with that. And that's a huge opening asset.
It's a really good way to start a fight where you can just say, hey, your mid laner's half health or worse. Yeah, like they either use their Aegis or they're out of here. We'll have to see the balance of who gets to be number 3 in the standings teeters on this game. We'll see if the Dragons can close it out, if the Leviathans can pull it back with Dave and Aggro.
We go again, the Jade Dragons and the Atlantis Leviathans once again. Toe and toe. Toe and toe. Toe to toe. I don't know what toe and toe
That would be
is.
uncomfortable. Can you imagine standing right next to, like, right in front of someone and your toes are touching?
No, I'd hate that.
Like,
Yeah, that'd be
literally.
horrible.
That's what that phrase means.
Yeah, right.
It's
They're going
gotta
toe
be.
to toe. They're lining up before a fight. They're.
But that's too close.
Yeah, right. No, it is too close.
Like, objectively.
No, absolutely. And it's not even, like a sign of the times with everything going on. I think even in normal times.
What I'm saying is, maybe this is reflecting poorly on me, but, like, I don't think, for example, my wife would want to go legitimately toe-to-toe with
no,
me.
I don't think anyone wants to go
Now
toe
it
to toe.
sounds like I'm fighting my wife. And I don't want it to sound like that. Unlucky. Oh, well. Sometimes it's how it be.
Sometimes, well, Myth was telling me I gotta let you talk more. So
yeah, maybe he was doing more harm than good there, huh?
yeah, I'll let you go there.
No
Look,
thanks.
My eyes have to go towards Sam for Soccer on the triple-double machine, and it's the Thanatos here. I say that jokingly because the history of this pick makes you think there's going to be a lot of killing going on, but potentially a lot of dying as well. And it's a small sample size. That happened in, one game?
Yeah.
But Sam on this pick feels pretty volatile.
No one has ever had 2 triple-doubles in SPL history.
And you want it.
And that is triple-digit kills, deaths, and assists. And I want it badly. So I'm hoping for it in this game. And in every game hereforth, honestly. Triple-doubles are just fun all around.
I don't
But
know,
you're
is that
right.
a good game or a bad game?
Yes. Sam on the Thanatos is definitely pretty volatile. But I like it up against something like a Tiamat where damage mitigation comes into play, especially whenever she gets lower. She's going to go into that grounded stance. She's going to get a bunch of scales. And the difference between doing the first 50% of Tiamat's health bar and the second 50% is very different. but not for Thanatos, because if you're in execute range, it doesn't matter how tanky you are, how much mitigation you have, anything like that. None of that matters. He's going to be able to kill you anyway. So I really like Thanatos in matchups against gods like Tiamat that are going to be harder to kill as is, but a little bit easier for him.
Love the little wave battle we had between Rongyu and the rest of the duo lane over there. As the Scorpion gets taken down, feels like things would be a little bit quiet there. Rongyu and Zatman pushing that wave in, PBM and Panicat just absorbing things. The mid laners swap out this game aggro. Shinto gets the Tiamat, Hurrywind on the Morgan Le Fay. There were moments in game 1 where Shinto put out some good damage on the Morgan Le Fay. Same for Soccer does rotate into mid, will hit the silence, but nothing more in mid as of late. And purple buff secured by the Jade Dragons. So all is well in the world right now for the Jade Dragons, but a bit of a flip-flop here. Taco figured, or put a lot of weight in the Tiamat there in game 1 for good reason. Hurrywind had a fantastic game. And so now it's time for Shinto to step up with what looks like it could be a Warlock staff early on in the build.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting choice for him. I mean, one way to counteract Thanatos, building defense doesn't do it because of all his pen, so go with something different.
Uh-oh, Sabers, look at all the damage, it's huge! And the first kill, the triple doubles online, and the Jade Dragons swing for first blood, unbelievable. That jump in is ridiculous, and Shinto had no chance to react. There are beads, but not much to beads there outside of damage. Needed the Aegis, but didn't have it.
All of a sudden, that Warlock staff starts sounding pretty good, doesn't it? A little bit of extra HP in that moment certainly would not have hurt him. It's a little bit slow over build, but Tiamat's a bit slow to start anyways. You don't have to worry too much about your early game, and especially with how mid lane is right now in competitive and how quickly you get your items online and how strong those items are. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more and more gods. It used to be just Baba, now Tiamat building Warlocks. It wouldn't surprise me too much to see more and more mid laners start to build it, because I think it's just a really good item to have, and it doesn't feel nearly as bad to build as it used to.
No, and then we see Soul Gem sometimes in these Tiamat builds, so could add some extra health later on. Panatom pushed on back by Hurrywind, some self-peel there. And so Hurrywind continues to stand strong and safe. Yarkor on the Kulkullen, remember it was Final K on Kulkullen in game 1. Now Yarkor gets one of his signature picks back. We know he really likes this one. But the rise of Bellona continues, and we've seen it in the hands of a couple of our solo laners, some more so than others. Admittedly, I don't know the last time I've seen Final K play this one, but should be interesting with the way he likes to play.
I mean, everyone was, I was so surprised to see Bellona. She's getting a buff next patch because she was seeing no play at all really recently, and then it was, oh, let's start playing Bellona because she works pretty well with Benevolent. She doesn't need the help to clear. She doesn't really need that starter help. She uses the extra farm pretty well, and she sits on Hunters, so let's go with her. And now it's, well, we're not building Benevolence anymore, but I kind of liked those games I was playing Bellona. I felt useful and valuable, and things like that happen in MOBAs all the time, where a character gets played for a random reason, and it's supposed to be a one-off thing, and then they look pretty good, and it makes someone else want to try it, and they think it feels pretty good, and all of a sudden it starts to become a mainstay in the meta. I wouldn't say Bellona's there yet, but maybe after the next patch she will be.
I know Gore's a big fan of this pick, so happy to see her starting to get a little bit more play. I am as well. And one thing I think the Dragons probably not happy to see, but maybe a necessary evil in the way that the draft went, is Rongyu on this Ymir. So we had a talk earlier today about certain supports and their Ymirs and their ability to take games over. I think Rongyu's got to be in that conversation to some level, right? I mean, the way that he has played the support role in general this year, I think gives you confidence on maybe any pick that this guy's going to play. But Ymir specifically in the ability to change team fights and find that evolving landscape or create the evolving landscape as fights go on, I think fits pretty well here with Rongyu. So I got high expectations for him in Game 2.
I have high expectations for Rongyu every single game because I think he is in the conversation for best support in Smite right now. I think he's really that good. I'd put him, I think I like to do it kind of tier-based, and I like Mike, Rongyu, and Genetics all in that same top tier right now of supports. Oh, and before I get any tweets or anything like that, also your favorite support that I didn't mention. They are also in that
They're
top
all in that
tier.
same tier?
They're all in that same tier, yeah.
They're all my favorite support, so
okay.
Just have one.
That's a big tier. But
yeah,
okay.
we got one big Awesome Jake's tier is in that tier. I don't know why. That was a horrible one. I'm sorry, Aggro. I'll let you go on here. Just
I don't
kidding.
want to.
No,
I don't want
all right,
to.
I'll keep going on.
Okay,
Blue
thank
buff
you.
dropped on down here, but Yarkor and Final K brawling out Roar from Yarkor's Final K. We'll jump on away. So Ultimates exchanged over here in the solo lane. Just a moment ago, PandaCat used his ult against Zapman in what looked like could be a little something interesting as far as a 1v1 goes, but not the case. And so all returns to quiet over in the duo lane, and now it's on Panatom and Sanford Soccer on the Thanatos and Gilgamesh respectively to start to get this ball rolling a little bit. Remember, Panatom fell a little bit behind early on. Now Sanford Soccer jumps on him, but there's no stun, but it doesn't matter. That axe does a whole lot of damage at the scythe before anyone tries to correct me, and Sam picks up his second.
Yeah, no one say anything to Dave and I, okay? No one say anything at all.
For any reason ever.
Yeah, for any reason ever. Unless you're complimenting us, in which case,
Yes,
at Aggro on Twitter and at Dolson Live is the place to find us. Really good well-timed ultimate from Yarkor. Immunes the stun coming from Sam's ultimate, but that's the thing about Thanatos is you don't have to use that ultimate as just that execute. It can be a great initiation factor. Final K tanks up the tower for him, doesn't let the tower aggro drop to the Thanatos, which is the danger zone. And Sam's off to a very good start.
Yep.
Both kills for the Thanatos underneath his belt. Love him with this mannequin. He's going to upgrade into a mannequin's hidden blade later. And if you thought late game Death Scythe didn't hit quite hard enough for you, then I've got good news because all of a sudden with mannequins.
Does anyone think that?
Not me, but it's possible. You know, there are people that think some pretty wild things, Dave, and that might be one of them.
I'm sure that is one of them too. For somebody out there, that's certainly one of the things. Blue buff close to respawning.
For
here.
example,
Okay.
someone could think Almond Joys are the best candy bar.
Was that Mifflin just a moment?
It was.
Yeah.
Someone could say something that psychotic to other human beings in their workplace and think that that's okay.
And then people wonder why our mentals are shattered. Wondering how Almond Joy is the best candy bar. There is pressure being put onto this blue buff by the Jade Dragons. Wall early from Wrong You here. This is a 4-man rotation from the Dragons and from the Leviathans. 4-man answer there as well. Only the Hunters left alone on the left side of the map. They're going to be seeing something popping up in the kill feed, you'd assume. And it's Panatom trying to get
Nice
started
blink.
on the back. Blink from Sam. Avoids a little bit, but the knock-up on the backside is going to re-engage the fight. Yarkor in execute threshold. Blinks away already. Does Sam go for it? The answer's no.
Whew, no kills on the kill threshold, but somehow, I mean, tons of fireworks there. 3 ultimates by the Jade Dragons. Only, well, really 4 because Mike transformed. So all 4 ultimates used by the Jade Dragons. Only 2 necessary, or 3 rather. I'll stop correcting myself eventually. There for the Leviathans. And it ends up being a successful blue buff invade, I suppose, for the Jade Dragons in the sense that they got the buff itself. And even though they don't get the kill, even if they wouldn't have gotten the buff, it's really more, it's the thought that counts on these types of invades. It's not really getting the buff itself, because look at the level disparity between Final K and Yarkor. Even if he were to get that blue buff, he doesn't get any gold or experience from it really, because you're 4-way splitting it. That's the thing about invades, is that they don't have to be successful in terms of kills, or even in terms of getting the buff. If you can waste their time and force them to triple or quad split a buff, you are winning, because then you get to go back to your side of the map and solo or double split, which is the most efficient, your buffs.
Yep.
So that's why it's always the better call if you can get away with it.
Final K just went and soloed his own enhanced blue buff, and so back to lane he'll go with a little extra XP. It was a fun little exchange between the 2 junglers at the beginning of that fight, wasn't it? Panatom with an initial aggressive movement, and then Sanford Soccer kind of counters that one out. I was hoping we would see a kill and a death added to the old triple-double counter there with an execute under the tower.
Best case scenario, you're looking at like a kill, a death, and like 2 assists or something like that. In that
I just more meant like the execute under the tower. I was hoping you would chase
that would've been
Yarkor
better.
and just a kill and a death added in there. Final K with 2 levels is now going to get ganked by Rongyu. The wall forces him to sidestep. The root and the stun are there as well. Final has his ultimate. So how much danger is there really? Final K doesn't seem to think there's much, but maybe relieve a little pressure is what Rongyu's doing here. Force Final K a little bit back because the blue buffs respawn. This time, though, the Jade Dragons, they won't send everyone but PandaCat. And finally, Yarkor will get his blue.
And they let him just double split it with Panatom, so not too much of an overshare there from Leviathans. But keeping the pressure up here are the Dragons going straight towards Pyromancer. I think they are still favored in these little skirmishes, but not by a ton. It's really that Sam has his second item complete, whereas Panatom does not. That's the biggest difference maker right now in these skirmishes.
No Pyromancer committed on by the Jade Dragons. Everyone had their actives outside of the Vision Shard. And so I was wondering if that would come into play, but it sure did not. So the Leviathan's okay with maybe slowing things down here, find themselves almost exactly 1,000 gold behind the Jade Dragons at this point. Zapman and Panda Cat have both been left alone here, so it's a bit of a pivot. We still see Panda Cat on the Izanami. Things looked good for that pick. You know, maybe along the same conversation point, we talked about the Artemis and kind of the attack speed stim style hunters there in game 1. Rom is also rounded out in this meta pretty well as one of the viable options.
And it's not the Rage this time for Zap on the ROM, it's the Odysseus bow instead. So not going into that crit, utilizing more of that Silver Branch build. I mean, you look at that Heimdall last game, no attack speed steroid for him, leans more into crit because he won't get as much leverage out of the Silver Branch. This time playing an attack speed stim character, goes immediately towards the triple bow. So no real surprise on this build in particular. Still think that, you know, Rom has seen some success, and I do think he's pretty good. I still think Izanami is probably slightly better, at least in theory, but we'll see if it ends up paying out for the Leviathans.
Gold Fury has spawned here, so we might start to see these hunters a little bit more active in the fight, if there is a fight around the Gold Fury. There's shred potential, really with both hunters here at this point. Interesting steal potential, I think, from both hunters in this game as well. Panda Cat a little bit more immediate, drops the big circle of damage, but you kind of got to be there, whereas Zapman has the ability from a range to kind of steal things away. And so the hunters, I think, yet again, maybe at the forefront of objective secure in what ended up being a pretty pivotal aspect of the game there in game 1. Silence onto Zapman, immediately followed up with a leap from PBM. But Sam for Soccer, I didn't see him coming, and neither did the Leviathans. It's a double stun underneath the tier 1 tower. Snipes used by Zapman. Wrong, you still taking some damage.
How did they
in
both
a
live?
2v4. The Leviathans will live, might lose their tower here. Oh no, Zapman is stuck around. And it's a killing spree for Sanford Soccer. Watch out though for Panatom around the back.
Blinks in, good ultimate right onto Panda Cat, but that stun didn't quite connect. Panatom still finds Heroin.
And it's Shinto who helps out there with the last bit of damage. Shinto running back towards the mid lane here. Sanford Soccer's got a lot of damage. A gets used. Not sure if the snipe connected anyway, but A gets used, and that's the important thing there, and that's down 175 seconds. So could have been cleaner maybe their aggro from both sides.
I mean, still 1-for-1 overall, right? It's not a huge deal on either side. You get a lot of relics from both players as well, both sides I should say. Heroin loses both of his relics, dies. Zapman loses both of his relics, dies. Panda Cat and Shinto both live, but lose their Aegis in the process. I feel like that should favor the Jade Dragons because they've got the all-in dive a little bit easier to execute with. Bologna, just blink, ult, that's a ton of distance. You cannot position against that as a backliner. You just don't have the space in order to do so. If you're not in blink Eagle's rally range, you're not in the fight. So that's hard to avoid. Doesn't, and of course the Thanatos ultimate on top of that.
So this is the Jade Dragons who know this is going on, saying, okay, you're going to take the Gold Fury Leviathans, we're going to take the Pyromancer on the other side of the map. If there is an objective trade early on in the game, that's often what you see is one will just take one, the other will take the other. And so not much changes in that last little bit of an exchange here. And forward goes York. Look at the damage onto Hurrywin. Panatom in there trying to chase him on back, and he does so successfully. Panatom picks up the second kill of the game for the Leviathans on a well-executed tower dive.
Really nice wall, and all of a sudden, Hurry is 3 levels down to this Tiamat. So not in a great position anymore on this Morgan Le Fay.
So Panda Cat used his ultimate here and then followed up with some damage onto Zapman, so Zap is going to have to go back to base. Panda's got to be careful here, or he thinks he probably has to be careful here because Wrong Yu's missing. Panatom is as well. As usual, it would be a death sentence if they caught out onto Panda Cat without that ultimate. So maybe left in a vacuum. Panda Cat's in a spot now where he can out-duel Zapman. But I don't think that's going to be happening all that often. Tier 1 tower down and left. And a little bit of gold trickles back to the Dragons.
With this late lead in the mid lane for Shinto, it's going to be tough for the Dragons to get anything done. The good news is that Sam, who's really the supposed dragon killer in this game, is in a good spot. He's got 3 items done, plenty of pen, a little bit of flat there with the Jotun's Wrath. You usually want to build at least one of those items on Thanatos and then let your 2 do the rest of the flat pen work for you. You get some nice percent pen now with the serrated edge. Still think I'd prefer Titans, but it seems like no jugglers on that train. Everyone's on the serrated edge train because movement speed tends to be pretty good. So not a massive surprise in that direction. I just think that when you're in this position now, if you're the Dragons, you've got to stall this game. Even though you are technically in the lead, I'd imagine that it's a pretty significant XP advantage for Shinto. I don't know if the Leviathans as a whole have an experience advantage, but certainly in the mid lane. And when your mid laner is level 14 and you're looking at a level 17 Tiamat, a level 16 Kukulkan, you just aren't that scary anymore. And that's really a big part of this meta right now is how much work mid laners are doing in these fights. And certainly you'd expect Shinto to do a little bit more in these fights than Herwin.
Yeah, it's probably tough to calculate out. I mean, Jade Dragons have at least a 1-level lead in literally every role, except for in the mid lane where Herwin is a little bit behind on this Morgan Le Fay. So maybe the trend continues. I think we've had this conversation a little bit, sort of Tiamat versus Morgan Le Fay, you know, who's worthy of that number 1 pick spot out of the mid lane. It appears, Aggro, on back-to-back games that Tiamat is starting to win that argument a little bit. Not to say Morgan is bad by any means, because that's, of course, not the case, but it seems to be that the Tiamat's still worthy of that first pick.
That does not surprise me a whole lot. I think that Tiamat has looked harder to deal with recently than Morgan Le Fay. Morgan Le Fay does really good things. I think she's an excellent mage. I definitely think she's worth picking. I don't think that she has as many games where she seems out of control as Tiamat does. And Tiamat's had her fair share of underwhelming performances, as all backliners do from time to time. But so far, through a game and a half, Tiamat standing on top.
You tell me you and Barracuda have ever had an underwhelming performance?
Well, yeah, but only because my support is trolling, my jungler wasn't there, my soul laner didn't give me Totem of Coup.
That's what you meant by backliners, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Got it. So it's, you know...
Never had a bad podcast, though, that's for sure.
No, I don't think you have. When is it? Sundays?
Sundays at 8 p.m.
Sundays at 8 p.m. Make sure to tune in.
There you go.
This game is quieted out here after some fireworks early on in the game. We're about to hit that 20-minute mark. You mentioned the Dragons maybe okay with things slowing down at this point. A lot of that centered around Shinto on this Tiamat. Give Herwin some time to kind of scale into this game a little bit and hopefully catch up levels and XP-wise. Sanford Soccer, though, in a position probably it's maybe a little awkward for him where he wants to keep things going. He's got the killing spree on this Thanatos and plenty of damage there as well. Maybe not worth the risk, though, of playing around with, Shinto gets a shutdown on Sanford Soccer and suddenly it becomes a lot more difficult to deal with.
Right, that's the fear. So the difference between letting Shinto get to this point in the game where he's an item up on Herwin in level 19 and nearly the highest level you can be, and just waiting until he hits 20 and we're just going to try and do the same on our end, that doesn't seem to be a huge issue, and I like that decision from the Jade Dragons. Now, if I'm the Leviathans, I'm power farming Shinto to 20, which is literally no different than any other day that ends in Y, and then I'm forcing a fight because you have to leverage that.
Yep.
I think the Jade Dragons composition is not massively favored come late game or anything like that. I think the Leviathans probably team fight a little bit better, but so far the execution has been better from the Jade Dragons in this set. So where can the Leviathans, can they be the ones asking the questions instead of having to present the answers?
Well, Oni Fury's up and so is Pyromancer. Last time the Jade Dragons were happy to take that. They're on the FG. They're on the FG right now, the Jade Dragons are. The Leviathans realize this because there's a ward there.
Oh.
So close to timing out. Unfortunate for the Jade Dragons. Up in the sky is Sanford Soccer. He'll crash down back in the backline in safety. So, no Oni Fury committed on. That's maybe a good call there from the Dragons. They're assuming that on cooldown the Leviathans are going to look towards this Fury, and they might be able to get away with one with the Leviathans, assuming the Dragons might just do the Pyromancer, but a good ward there. Keeps the Jade Dragons honest.
A little surprised they didn't just bring the D ward, but maybe if they sentry that, then the Leviathans know that is a potential problem for them, so they might have sent someone to check either way. Surprised the Leviathans aren't being aggressive now. I know they don't have Panatom's ultimate, and he's really been their fight starter so far, but Sam doesn't have beads or ult. Mike doesn't have ult. This should be a good fight for the Leviathans.
The Leviathans are going to start bringing the game to the Jade Dragons. The Oni Fury gets taken down beneath half HP. It's a blink in from Yarkor and a 3-man knockup to boot. Panatom is in there on the follow-up as well. In the back line, Final K wailing away, but Yarkor is traded out one. Panda's got a double. The Izanami's starting to swing. Shinto has made that Tiamat damage stick. Wrong you into the Shard's Bites, avoids the stun. On a great wall as he fades away as well. Should be another, and Shinto's got the double.
And that's why you force the fight around the Oni Fury, because your Tiamat is too big to handle. Level 20 now for Shinto, and he might be able to kill Panda Cat.
Why not? Why not, right? With the way that this game is going, Shinto walking into the last 2 members of the Jade Dragons, and instead it's just going to be Jungle Farm taken away. The Fury never ended up being secured there, so that's something that Zapman and co can likely just rotate back to here and secure for themselves as well. So great news for the Leviathans is that this Tiamat and the lead that was built up ended up sticking. The good news then for the Dragons is that it's all catch up from here as far as XP goes, and Hurrywin able to close up that level 2 gap, but then there's a big gold lead net worth wise that you have to worry about. You got about 2,000 extra gold with Shinto here that Hurrywin's behind. The Oni Fury is just going to make that a little bit wider.
You know, the Leviathans win that fight, but I'm coming away from that. If I'm the Jade Dragons, I think I feel really good about how that fight went, because Final K was solo diving. Sam didn't have ultimate, didn't have beads, couldn't get away from Panatom. Fine with solo diving, and he still was able to 1v2 this Shinto Zapman backline, and they aren't getting that much stronger from here. They were pretty close to full build going into that fight. Whereas the Jade Dragons backline with where Hurrywin is in his build is going to get significantly stronger from where they are. And the Dragons still almost won that fight. So I think this is the right call from the Leviathans. I don't think they should come out of that fight feeling like, oh, it's fine. We're just going to destroy them in every single team fight from here on out. I would come out of that fight going, all right, we got to keep the pace high, because eventually that might not go as easily as it did.
There's one way to do it. Let's start up the FG. This time the Jade Dragons will be close by, as the Leviathans were not last time, but did check the Jade Dragons. Now the Fire Giants still being worked down by Zapman, but there's enough of a response here that's going to make the Leviathans think twice about fully committing onto the objective.
Look at that left side. This is smart from the Leviathans. Force the Jade Dragons to group up. You've got half an Oni wave, or maybe a full Oni wave, plus Tiamat minions, plus a normal wave on this left-hand side. This should get a tier 2 easily. That wave will probably push to Phoenix if it's allowed. So this is smart by the Leviathans. You get to farm by not doing anything if you're the Leviathans, because you're going to get this passive, this gold and experience boost from getting these towers on the left-hand side, whereas the Dragons can't farm by being over here all grouped up. Yep. This is the right call from them.
Sanford Soccer at 3-1-2 has slowed down a little bit since the early game killing spree, as the rest of the Jade Dragons have, to be fair to Sam. Ended up picking up Titan's Bane. I know you were hoping that would find its way into his build, and in there it is. Final K blinks forward here. Panatom has to leap away, but Eagles Rally is going to force out the beads. It looks like that's all Final K came for.
And that's fine, but he's got to be worried about this wall coming in. Hammer off the mark there on the wrong Q. So that's a good trade, because Eagles Rally a very low cooldown, even without a whole lot of CDR in the build there for Final K. But this is still the Leviathans grouping up and forcing the Jade Dragons to do something about this wave on the left-hand side. Yep. It's nearly gotten that tier 2.
Yep, tier 1 fell. Tier 2 close to it. Yarkor finds his way into the back, but look at the damage he's taking in Sanford Soccer with the easiest kill secure of his life. Yarkor missing from this fight now, and the Leviathans don't want to fight without their solo.
Sam still has ultimate, still has blink, could keep this fight going if he so chooses. But no frenzy anymore for Polar Bear Mike, no relics for this Izanami. If I'm the Leviathans, I am not backing down from this engagement. They are still looking good in the relic department.
So Wrong Yu now with his ultimate and his wall is going to try to change things up here. Fire Giant was taken down to half. Hovering Death from Sanford Soccer. He's alone right now, and so he'll dunk back with the rest of his team. The left side wave has been dealt with the old-fashioned way. Just let the towers deal with it. And so at least the tier 2 tower is still up. And the Jade Dragons, I think, correctly so, according to some of your summary there, end up backing away from the FG.
I mean, surprised that the Leviathans only got a tier 1 on left. I really thought that would have gotten a little bit more, and that's probably what they were counting on. I think maybe a little bit of lack of patience there from the Jade Dragons. They were a little wary of taking too much damage from fire. Final K's ultimate came up right as Sam was coming down from his hovering death. they could have synced those timers, that fight probably goes a little bit better. But you're starting to see exactly what I mean. Yarkor goes in, and this time, because Whirlwind has an upgraded Soul Reaver, one-taps him for it and does a ton of damage off a good
brutal.
Sunder from PBM. And Yarkor isn't getting a whole lot tankier in the build. I mean, he's going to be able to upgrade his starter item and then sell that Fighter's Mask for some tankiness, something like a Mantle of Discord probably. And that'll help. But Whirlwind hasn't upgraded his starter. He's got another item slot to go. Don't think it gets a whole lot easier for the Leviathan's backline dive. And Panatom isn't going tanky. He's going damage.
Yep.
So a bit risky for the jungler for the Leviathans.
Well, both solo laners waited until the last item slot to pick up their starter item. And it is still a benevolence for FineOK. Ends up transforming into the, or upgrading, I guess transforming, another way to look at it, into the Animosity. So maybe more passive on the upgrade concern than the extra gold and XP after some of the changes.
Still feels very good on Bellona. Like I was saying earlier, it just ends up feeling really good when you get the extra gold in addition to eventually getting the starter item that you want.
Is that just how that wave is built up? I don't know if anyone's been over on the left side of the map in the last few minutes.
Because it was like half an Oni wave that takes forever in order to die underneath that tier 2, so it takes multiple waves of build-up in order to kill it. And that no one's influenced this lane for 5 minutes.
It's been so long
over here. It's
left to its own devices, right? Has anyone done that where you just let minions play the game and you see which side ends up winning? Does that happen?
No one's gone full Bonanza City on the left side of the map. That's a Kid Nation reference for those of you who
not me.
who really understand it. That's a shame.
They took it off. I tried to watch it.
On
It's
YouTube?
gone. Oh, is it on YouTube?
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
All right, so I need to watch it.
It's not on any streaming sites because it's like it's weird.
No,
it's
you
messed
can
up.
watch good content is youtube.com/SmitePro.
Not Kid Nation on there.
No.
But other arguably good things.
I think inarguably it's good.
They're good. It's just like, I was going to say better, but then I couldn't bring myself to do it because Kid Nation is truly
Kid Nation is too good. I know. You and
a
Joe
mind-blowing
You guys love watching that show. Over the last couple minutes, in the meantime, the left lane has been left alone, and that means actives, ultimates, all of it has come back and available now for both of these teams. Tiamat minions are back on the left, but quiet enough at the moment. That's going to take a minute to build that up. Jade Dragons left to their own devices, going to take this Pyromancer down. No real answer from the Leviathans, no real reason to commit on defending that. And so the Fire Giant dance begins, Aggro, and
here we go.
Who's going to be the one to initiate?
Buckle in. I don't know, man. I mean, it doesn't matter because the other team's going to be there to stop them. Without crit in the meta, it just takes so long on these Fire Giant fights, and teams know that. They know they don't actually have to respect a team that pulls it right away. My goodness, that was a big chunk on the final. Okay, that was the Soul Gem proc coming from Shinzo, who has finished off his Rod of Tahuti.
Hey,
oh my God!
On the PBM as well, and Zapman's got the last bit of damage, and suddenly this game has come alive just a bit. Yarkor blinked forward, everyone out of range, so he could not find the knockup for the re-engage in the Jade Dragons. So that flips things around here because PBM gone, that means no frenzy, no coerce. So the Jade Dragons not only can't really start up the FG on their own, Aggro, I'm not sure they can defend it because there's also Tiamat minions pushing down the left.
Oh, here comes Whirlwind and walks in directly into the damage coming from the Leviathans until Zapman puts him down with the snipes.
Watch out for the hovering death from Sanford Soccer. Could change things around. He's got a kill on a Panatom in the back, but 2 members of the Jade Dragons have died. Nearly got a kill on a Zapman as well. But Sanford Soccer walking over wards. We'll try to leave, but you're backing on a ward, my friend, and he learns that the hard way. There's the root, there's the damage, there's the double. And then Shinto's on a rampage.
Yeah, I probably should have just ran out there for Sam. Definitely a bit of a greedy attempt to get the back off, but like his decision to not use beasts because he's dead there no matter what. That might have been the fastest I've ever seen a support die in 28 minutes of the game. I mean, that was absolutely insane how fast Mike died. Didn't get a chance to use his ultimate, didn't get a chance to use his jump. And as soon as that happened, the Leviathans did not hesitate and found themselves a really nice window.
Enhanced Fire Giant now. That's the important thing to look at. That dance took so long that we're enhanced now. And the Leviathans have a great opportunity because as left alone as the left side of the map has been, and that's not where the Leviathans are looking now, that Phoenix is already open. So if that's something that the Leviathans look towards later on, they can get there quickly, and that's normally where the target is. As Primal Fury at least gets taken by Panda Cat. And so all else is equal, you know, items-wise and starter item upgrades, at least at an initial glance. But that Enhanced Fire Giant's a massive swing here. It can be so difficult for the Dragons to defend against the onslaught that the Leviathans will bring.
Right, let's take a look at the upgrades that the Leviathans have gotten since the last time they one-shot PBM. An Enhanced Fire Giant for
feels
4
good.
members.
Yep,
that's
that's
a
good.
lot.
That's strong.
Let's look at the upgrades that Mike has gotten since when he got one-shot in mid. He now has a Sentinel's Boon, which is some health and like 45
Hell yeah.
of each prot.
That's all I need. Sentinel's Boon against Enhanced Fire Giant.
No, Dave, look.
Take every day of the week, baby.
Okay, all right, sure, man. I'm going to go with the Leviathan's upgrade being a bit stronger, but again, you're allowed to think whatever you think on this.
I gotta sow some intrigue into the build, right?
I
No.
suppose.
No, there's aspects of casting where you can sow intrigue.
Yes.
But Sentinel's Boon against Enhanced Fire Giant. I don't
Not
think
one
it's,
of them.
no, it's not one of those spaces. So left side wave, left side Phoenix was open, and that's where the Leviathans will go.
For what it's worth, Panatom not having the Enhanced Fire Giant actually very important because this 2v2 would be really lethal for the Leviathans, for the Phoenix in particular. They would put a lot of pressure on the bird. If Panatom had that EFG, without it, it's still threatening, but it's not nearly as scary as it could have been.
The Jade Dragons are at least fully stocked on their Phoenixes, and they're going to do their best to keep them all alive. It's a regrouping underneath the mid lane. That means Zatman and Rongi are going to do damage over here on the left. PBM is going to make it good old 2v2. We've returned to laning. It's a silence onto Rongu, but no big follow-up, and a quick breeze, maybe a sneeze onto this left Phoenix is going to get the last bit of damage. So the Jade Dragons really have to consider how heavy they're willing to defend this one, because in the meantime, the mid lane Phoenix has also taken some damage.
I think I would just give this if I'm the Dragons.
have to,
You
right?
can't body block the ROM autos, no point. I'm surprised they still have 3 members over on that side of the map, because now your mid Phoenix had an extra wave go in where it was only Final K and Sam there to defend. The good news, if you're the Dragons, the Leviathans did not push up the right side wave. So this is really their only offensive option, at least when it comes to having a mid.
Panda Cat does not have his ultimate. Panatom and Shinto do not either at the moment. So some damage connecting onto the back line. And the Jade Dragons will be happy that they've at least got a slight ultimate advantage, but PBM's got to choose that transformation well, and the course maybe helps things. Actually, looks like he's already transformed, so that wears off maybe in a minute, and that's a big loss.
But there's only a minute left on this FG. So Mike, instead of saying, hey, I might not get my ultimate off, says, I'm going to get it off one way or the other. You guys are going to have to come into me while I'm in that transformation. No, he actually has to de-transform earlier than I thought.
Sentinel's Boon, baby! PBM stands strong now. It's Frenzy that gets used. And the Leviathans just back away while the Frenzy does its thing here for the Jade Dragons. They thought the dive was coming.
And it's because Rongu had popped that heavenly agility in order to start that fight off that the Jade Dragons thought it was a big commit, but a tight leash there for the Leviathans. They don't extend too much.
Is that a win? You lose your left side Phoenix under Enhanced Fire Giant. You happy
100%.
if you're the Dragons?
100%. Now, it doesn't feel great because a couple of things are working against you. Not just the fact that your left side Phoenix is the one that died, which is the most important, the furthest from Fire Giant. But it's only Fury next. Bit unlucky there.
Oh, no.
And you've got Tiamat.
Tiamat minions, yep.
So now you've got normally left side waves. They're tough, but maybe we can defend. How about left side waves plus Tiamat minions plus I'm the Leviathans. I'm not scared of not going to fire right away. I'm going to Oni Fury first. I'd much rather skirmish around that in order to get that, feel like we're very favored there, and then head on over to the Fire Giant and secure it that way. I don't think if I'm the Jade Dragons, sometimes we see teams in positions like this trade Oni Fury for Fire because they think Oni is that important. I don't think the Jade Dragons can afford to do that because they aren't strong enough on their Phoenix defense. I don't like their tools very much there.
They're doing their best to push this left side wave up as far as it can possibly go. And look at the response from the Leviathans. A couple members head on back to base.
Interesting.
Jade Dragons considering a siege.
Gotta
but the
do
moment
it.
that the Leviathans show up, looks like they're playing a bit hesitant. Yeah, good to point out there, Aggro. A few Tiamat minions making their way down the right. PBM drop kicked by Panatom and then frozen by Rongu, and the freeze will stick. Somebody's got to go back at some point here. The Leviathans might be able to delay these backs and let those minions do some work.
Fine, okay, and Yarkor just boxing it out, and Yarkor is winning this fight pretty handily. The Leviathans just trying to keep the Jade Dragons on the line until those minions work their way into the right side Phoenix.
And they're there. Fine, okay, has to use his ultimate, and the chase is on. The Leviathans looking for Mike. Mike has to use the leap, and Fine, okay, has to use the blink. And now the Leviathans will use the sprint to try to close this gap a little bit further. That minions being dealt with, so less pressure now. PBM uses the transform, immediately frozen in place, and Zapman's on the killing spree.
I just think the Jade Dragons, if you want to commit to that play, I don't mind it. I don't mind them saying, hey, we've just got more objective DPS than you. We're just going to Fafnir transform on your left side Phoenix, and we're just going to do it. We're just gonna stand there on your left side Phoenix, and you know what? If you don't back fast enough after doing EFG, we're gonna try and kill your Titan, because we're disadvantaged from our position. We are taking a risky play because we feel like these are better odds than sitting around and waiting until this next fight starts. But then they kind of they lose their appetite a bit. They realize that it's a little bit too risky, and at that point, Leviathans kind of had them where they wanted them. I mean, now you're in a position where you could have potentially stepped up 5v4, but is that better odds than 5v5 underneath your Phoenixes? Maybe.
Right.
Mike hasn't been able to do anything in these last few fights. He's gotten one shot.
Oh no, so I'm happy I'm not the one shot calling trying to make those decisions, because the odds don't feel great really either way right now for the Jade Dragons. Feel horrible that the Enhanced Fire Giant is back. Draugr buff is on our Phoenixes. That'll buy us a half second or two once the Leviathans
that's like one auto.
Right, an auto attack or two. Left side Phoenix is respawn for the Jade Dragon, so it's Oni minions that are going to have to be worried about, but at least it's not Oni fire minions on the end of that Fury. So, bought enough time with the sort of pseudo push to allow the Phoenix to respawn by the time that the Oni Fury got taken down here. Good wall from Rongyu, kind of keeps Final K just in place there. It's a drop kick from Panatom, but look at the damage Panda Cat has taken. Look at the damage the Phoenix has taken.
Gone already. That one auto, they had to go back in for it at the very least.
That's right.
And no one has answered these Oni waves in mid or in left. How does the defense get better here from the Jade Dragons? I don't really see it.
It's up to the Dragons now to keep this game alive. And the Jade Dragons for pushing it on to a game 3. Panatom has played this front line well. Look at the damage Shinto is doing, tearing through Final K. Panda Cat is low yet again. Winds of Shamash will separate out this fight. Now the Leviathans work for it. It's a nice stun from Sanford Soccer. But what else is there? There's Yarkort chasing you down, opening up the fighting with a big kill.
Ronghu's low, but not as low as Final K. What a wall, and Shinto gonna Goomba stomp him down.
Panda Cat, he's got to do the damage here. Hurrywind has the opportunity to do so as well. Zapman is low. A lot of the physical damage out on the back line of this fight. So the Jade Dragons have a second to breathe. They're without 2 of their members for at least 45 seconds.
And that left side Phoenix already fell to just the Oni wave. So now you just have to let Zapman lifesteal. Let your Fire Giant sustain you. You got it for 2 minutes. You're obviously not going to wait that long because you want to use these respawn timers to your advantage, but great position for the Leviathans.
Panda Cat's got Aegis, does not have ultimate. Now the Leviathans walk forward, and look at the damage onto the Titan. The Dragons won't get a chance, and on to a game 3 we go.
Hey man, I don't know. Morgan Le Fay got behind in that game. I get it. You know, Tiamat, do we have to? This is so close, you know? Like, no one...
This is toe-to-toe.
You know what's interesting, though?
It looked horrible.
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did. You know what's interesting? I was thinking about this, but I decided not to bring it up for the sake of commentary. Toe-to-toe means different things for different people. You know, for, like, Simone Biles, you're right there, right? But for Shaquille O'Neal, we might be this far apart.
That's true.
You know? So maybe we should start specifying whose toe to whose toe we're really talking about.
I mean, come on. He's got big feet, but...
Yeah.
Not like this far apart.
I don't know.
Unbelievable. Just like the Leviathans play here in Game 2. And it's the Game 3 we all wanted. Dragons versus Leviathans. Game number 3 right after this.
out the box. Top speed going top. 101 going pop. Getting hot, hot, hot. In the paint, never flop. At the rim like who? Get the crown like Braun. Yeah. Make it some and I'm spending some. What's the plan? Bet I get it done. It's me, yeah, neighborhood. It's me, yeah, give me some. Wifey icy, yeah, freeze up. New friends, I don't need them. Checks coming by the spins. Kids eating off the reruns. If I'm not doing the
Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible. And in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
That's a lot of cores.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
What's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240 Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the Smite Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible Smite experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's @Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
And you're telling me an alien wore this?
Welcome back, everyone, to the Smite Pro League Season 8, all powered by Alienware. And as you just heard Aggro say, you too are capable of getting your own Alienware gear. You go to smitegame.com/Alienware and you use code SMITEAW on checkout to make sure you get those discounts, whether you're getting the R10 Ryzen desktop the same way that our pros are playing on, or that 25-inch 240 Hz gaming monitor. It doesn't necessarily matter. Just make sure you go to smitegame.com/Alienware and you use code SMITEAW. And again, you can follow Alienware on Twitter and Instagram at Alienware, and go to alienwarearena.com to join their global giveaways and more. But the Dragons and the Leviathans, Taco, are now tied up. And so far, Tiamat has the 100% win rate. It doesn't matter whether you prefer Morgan Le Fay over the other. It just definitely seems like one is winning more than the other.
The facts don't lie, and the stats don't either, Gore. I think that Tiamat, as far as Game 3 is concerned, might be in the best interest for both sides to potentially just ban it away entirely, because as it currently stands, the damage, very impactful. The setup, also impactful. There just doesn't really seem to be a weak point in terms of building a composition around this god, and it's just posing so many issues for both Leviathans and Dragons. Just whoever has her seems to have the leverage here.
And with a front line like the rest of the Leviathans, I mean, you've got a Gilgamesh, a Ymir, and a Kukulkan setting up kills for her. Although right there, it was kind of Shinto versus the world. Ronghyuk had a little bit of a hand in it. But again, like, Zap wasn't really under too much pressure. Same thing for the Tiamat. In fact, if anything, it was tons of setup going against them, making things a lot easier for the Leviathans. Granted, it was not an easy game. They did manage to maintain control for a lot of it. The TM minions is what I'm going to start calling them. Were moving around the left-hand lane for a long time, making sure that the Dragons were preoccupied around those fire giants. But for the most part, they just played really well the whole time. I mean, there's not much more to say about the Leviathans there.
Well, I think that some of the breakdown that we can make for this Dragons composition, though, is that it just seemed as though they had an issue in terms of that initiation factor in general. It just didn't really seem as though they were really able to generate enough aggression to fully collapse onto that back line there, and that's a big part of the reason why Shinto and Zapman were able to, well, I say free cast, but maybe a little bit more in Shinto's department than Zapman. Zapman not really getting an opportunity to really introduce himself to the team fight on core, at least not until that mid to late game really started to take over. That's where you really start to see that ROM come into fruition as well, and all that late game potential that he has. But relatively quiet game from the Dragons there in number 2. I think the Leviathans just had a firm grasp of the map control and the pacing at which they were moving around that map.
And being able to find, I think, better control moving into game number 3 will be important for the Dragons throughout this set if they want to be able to win it. Again, this is the battle for third, and the Dragons are going to be your first pick team here for game number 3, which, if Tiamat's left open, means that they could willfully not pick it until third like they did in game number 1, or scoop it up immediately and make the Leviathans make some awkward choices. Of course, that's assuming she can even make it to that point, which we're kind of hoping she doesn't.
Well, I think that it actually works into the Dragons' favor here, Gore, because I think that puts most of the pressure onto the Leviathans, if anything, to ban that pick away. But also potentially with a lot of the God pick selections that we've been seeing getting let through time and time again here, I think Gilgamesh starts to become a little bit more of a focal point. Even the Fafnir and the Emirs, we see these aggressive supports time and time again for both of these teams. And I think that there is definitely something to note on Vrangi's performance with that Emir. I do feel as though the cutoff impact was just kind of devastating against the Jade Dragons there. It seems as though the team, at least, if they're going to opt for these high execution compositions, rely on them cleaning up the fights before they have to worry about an escape factor, well, you probably don't want to be having to deal with an Emir in the process of all that, because that's what Emir does best. He just controls the space in which you operate.
We'll have to see. They're making that decision now. And so far, 4 of these bans are the exact same as they had in game number 1. It was the Fenrir right there instead of the Umoja, but then Umoja was the next ban for them. So the Leviathans are trying to narrow down a little bit more of that window. The Dragons trying to figure out what game they're trying to play. This is where it gets interesting to me, because when it's the last couple of bans like this and there's so many powerful gods available, Taco, this one feels like it's 4D chess. You know that you are first pick, you know what's going to be available for you, but you also know, like you have highlighted and we've said before, they're going to get 2 of whatever's left, so you have to be very careful. And they opt into the Osiris as their ban. So the Dragons getting rid of the Gilgamesh Osiris Raijin here. A couple of target picks, but the Osiris maybe a little more out of left field. Tiamat, that one, it just belongs there.
The entire time my brain is just maybe, but it turns out that I think reason triumphs overall, and Tiamat won't get a chance to see her in game number 3, but now that makes Morgan Le Fay, I think, one of the next best options, but not necessarily the best first pick potential here for the Jade Dragons. Wouldn't be surprised to maybe see them prioritize elsewhere, but no, it seems as though they feel content to run it back on the Morgan Le Fay, knowing that the Leviathans won't have that response of the Tiamat in tow, but that means that the Leviathans very likely can look towards some of that frontline impact that we were talking about earlier, whether it be the Fafnir, whether it be the Emir, possibly even elsewhere.
Now, if I remember correctly, the first Morgan Le Fay game that we got, it was the Kings that had dealt with it. We'll see if the Leviathans learned anything from that, because it was that conversation of like, well, she doesn't handle like crazy dive too well, and the Kings, or no, I'm sorry, it was the Leviathans actually at the time versus the Kings, who just heavily dove her. It wasn't the Odin, it was, what, I think Fafnir. I know they had a Baba Yaga to Kakula in that game, and so we'll see what they do this time around. The Odin banned out, I believe, both games so far, banned by the Leviathans. Last game, Dragons' first game. And they're going to first pick it here. How, does he have a particularly good, I guess with no leap, he's pretty solid at locking Morgan Le Fay down, at least for a little bit.
Morgan can definitely struggle against Odin's lockdown potential, but that's only if the Leviathans actually take decent follow-up gods for that Odin cage, because you can have a strong pick in the Odin alone. Sure, he might do fantastic in the laning phase, but as far as transitioning that laning phase pressure to the team fight, that's definitely going to come down to the overall draft as a whole. And I think that for the Leviathans, right now, it's all about solidifying the front line. Lots of control and lockdown, that's for sure. Great separation tactics that they can utilize to their advantage here. And Ball being back in the Jade Dragons court might want to start looking to prioritize strong counter initiation points, because Odin and Amir, I think that's all the setup that you could possibly want in terms of being proactive on the map.
Well, Izanami's been there all 3 games for them, and it was good, then okay, then now we'll have to, I guess, wait and see how it will fare in game number 3. But with the Odin, the Amir on the other side, it's definitely deadly. A Fafnir locked in alongside that, so a very classic and, again, game 1 duo lane for the Dragons.
Yeah, I was expecting the Fafnir and Amir to be the emphasis for both of these teams. Both teams love those aggressive support style of play, but of course that's going to put, I think, the pressure back onto the Leviathans again to make sure that they solidify a strong dual lane part for the Amir. And I think Rom has cleared that can certainly match that of the Izanami thanks to those Astral Arrows. Have to remember the bonus power as well. Very threatening, at least for the start of the game. But the Fafnir has the coerce, boost up the Izanami. That's always a really nice look for the Jade Dragons. I think that as far as the 4th and 5th bans are concerned, Leviathans, they're already taking note. Don't want to have to deal with the Fenrir. So much flexibility, I think, with that pick between solo and jungle still. That's one of the primary reasons why it just seems a little bit more threatening. But it does appear as though the Leviathans want to force Fine into an uncomfortable position here. Granted, the King Arthur is still up for grabs. He's not exactly a warrior that we see all that often anymore at the pro level, but I do think that he still has some viability here in terms of control that could be well utilized by the Dragons.
You had mentioned it. So Fenrir, Cucullin gets sat down by the Leviathans, Erlong Shin, and Serket on the other side. With that Rom picked up, Zapman obviously must have liked it from game number 2 because he went back to it. But now it's the question of Panatom or Shinto. They're going to answer with Shinto. Baba Yaga, who, again, kind of blew up, boots disappear. Everyone's like, all right, we're going to run her. And then I think it was like last week, she just slowly started being played less. Maybe Benevolence had a hand in that. But now she's still going to come back and do damage.
I think the main thing to keep in mind for that conversation, Gore, you should check it out yourself as well. See how many times Morgan Le Fay and Tiamat were left open.
Oh, yeah, you've got a good
in
point.
Those
They were heavily
where
available.
Baba Yaga was not picked, because I have a feeling it has something more to do with that than anything else. But Baba Yaga also, I think, has a great follow-up. Like, that's what we were talking about for this Odin cage. You want that AoE damage that's going to feel impactful when you actually have your opponents trapped inside of it. Shards of Ice can't do it all alone, especially not if it's Vrongyu on the Amir, because it's just not going to be as much damage flat out. But with the Baba Yaga now, that home sweet home, a lot of territory that's going to be covered. The Cabrakan have to assume that this is for Fine in the solo lane. Should be an interesting matchup, walls versus walls here. But Jade Dragons, they've only got one to operate with, so the Hoombots can kind of close the gap here in terms of that crowd control that we were kind of asking for from the Dragons comp.
And definitely an interesting draft. I feel like, I don't know how many weeks ago it was now, but there was a pretty wide discussion on whether or not Cabrakan solo was going to explode and become the new thing, or if it was going to just kind of continue being laid by the wayside. And now here it is locked in to take on that Odin. It's going to be a fun one to watch. I mean, technically he brings walls as well, just a different kind and a different sort. And there's going to be a set there for Panatom to finalize that one. Definitely feels very heavy team fight on both sides, but every time I think team fight, I just drift immediately down to the Fear No Evil for Hunbats, and it feels like the Dragons have a good initiator.
It's a great initiation, don't get me wrong, Gore, but it can be a little concerning in the sense that Pandacat's really going to have to watch his back in this game. And I mean that quite literally, because Benithum's sole purpose with this set, I think, is just going to be flank watch. He is going to just constantly try to abuse this Izanami and her predictability on the escape. I really feel like this is Leviathan just trying to have it out for Pandacat here, because if they can prevent this Hunter from ever taking off, it doesn't matter how much control you have if you don't have any damage to follow it up, and you can't expect the Hoombots to do it all against so much lockdown that the Leviathans have opted in for.
Yeah, that's a lot of lockdown. And honestly, even like you said with Set, if he chooses to be out of the fight for ganks, That's still a very, very fearsome 4 that they're running with on the Leviathans. The Odin lockdown alongside the Ymir. I mean, the way they ran it last time around, the ROM was able to get the best of the Izanami. They controlled the game for the most part. Do the Dragons have a good chance at clapping back here, or is this Cabrakan maybe too much of a wild card?
I don't think that the Cabrakan is the wild card. I think it's more so just about how well the Jade Dragons are going to be able to keep their backline intact because, again, Fear No Evil, yes, it is an excellent team fighting tool, but I really like what the Leviathans have done in response for that lockdown.
Well, can you keep them safe, or are the Leviathans going to work their way into the backline? Let's find out here in game number 3.
Figured this one would be contested, and contested it has been. Jade Dragons and Leviathans going the distance, and one final time, Dolson, Aggro, and Doug will be bringing you the action. And Aggro, we finally get a bit of a pivot here out of the mid lane. Still Morgan Le Fay. Thumbs up.
Yep.
No Tiamat.
Yep.
Also, I think a thumbs up that the Leviathans or the Dragons don't have to play against it. And here's the good news. You get rid of a Tiamat in exchange for a pick that's definitely not good in the late game at all and doesn't have big damage or anything like that in this Baba Yaga.
But David, it is good in the late game. It does do a lot of damage.
Does it?
Yeah, it's like pretty safe too.
Right. I think it stacks pretty well.
Yeah, it's
you get those items online pretty early. You just
a lot of
Warlocks
AoE.
into Charons.
It's hard to react to.
Man, so it's not a bad pick at all, is it?
No, it's actually a good pick for the Leviathans, I would say. And Shinto is going with a very similar playstyle to that Warlock Staff Tiamat. Let's just get to the late game and really turn the Jets on there. What I want to see is the ability for the Jade Dragons. We talked in Game 1 about how they looked a lot like themselves in Phase 1, where it was constant pressure in the mid-game, constantly forcing fights that the Leviathans had to react to, and the Leviathans struggled in those moments. I want to go even further back in the Jade Dragons playbook. I want to go to page 1, and I want them to just gun it down. That's what I want, because
that is page 1.
Because if the Leviathans are going to pick stuff like Baba and Set that are so late game that let you just win team fights come to later stages, like Odin, even though Odin is pressure in your lane, then maybe we can just try and win the game early. And we don't see teams do that very often these days. It's not for lack of trying, but maybe the Jade Dragons can try and put a little bit more pressure on the map than they have the last few games.
And maybe a Cabrakan with his big beefy damage is a way that you can do a little bit of that. An interesting pivot here, Aggro, that is not just in the picks department, but in the starter item department. We already saw Panda Cat take a little bit of damage from Wrong You and Zapman. Tainted Steel, though, is going to be the starter item pickup here for this Iza. Admittedly, not something I expected to see today.
No, but it makes some sense up against Panatom diving in, and he's going to be the one who's hitting Panda Cat the vast majority of the time in these team fights. He's going to be hitting onto your core a lot of times in these team fights. Let's get that anti-heal online, and you can't fit anti-heal anywhere else in the Hunter build. You don't know, you're obviously going to have your Divine Ruins and your Brawler's Beat Sticks coming out of Sam. I mean, all of those things are going to be there for them, but now the fact that your Hunter is going to have a little bit of extra anti-heal as well, maybe it'll shut down this set's carry potential in the later stages.
We've had a pretty similar support matchup throughout the set here so far. Ymir's, Fafnir's notably have been the pick. So Wrong You back on the Ymir PBM. How's looked good on the Fafnir here today? I think you think of Mike, you think of the Ymirs, the Emojas, picks like that. Fafnir, I think, was in a bit of limbo for Mike there for a while on how that pick would look. I mean, it hasn't been bad. Despite being 1-1 here in this set, I think Mike has looked pretty good on this pick. So, continued on that trend is definitely going to be a good thing. I want to shift my eyes to the jungle a little bit, though, Aggro. Sanford Soccer on this Hunbats, Panatom on the set. Two very different looks from the picks we've already seen out of these two here today. Though Sanford Soccer on Hunbats, I don't think there's a lot left to the imagination there. This is a pick we know that this guy likes.
One of his best gods, probably the best Hunbats player, I think, in the history of the SPL. I mean, Adapting and Cubo Fred's names are going to pop up there, as they well should. And Sam has just looked so comfortable on this god in his time playing it, and I think he really it allows him to be the playmaker that he likes to be. And he was in a position to do that last game on the Thanatos. Remember how well he started? But it was the fact that Shinto got so far ahead of Hurwind in mid that really stopped all the momentum for the Jade Dragons. It brought that game to a pretty grinding halt. And all of a sudden, Sam's pick goes from really strong right now to I'm late game Thanatos. And that's not as bad as it used to be, but it's still not, you're not picking Thanatos being like, boy, wait until I get 6 items. Like, then it's really going to start cooking for me. He really probably wanted to keep that pace a little bit higher. So on the Hunbat's pick, this gives him some similar mid-game carry potential. It doesn't do it nearly as well early, of course, but does well in the mid-game, but has a much, much better late game than something like the Thanatos. And I think the Jade Dragons, I'm asking for them to be a little bit more aggressive and try and snowball the game early. But I don't think that's what their draft is really designed to do. This looks like a draft that is understanding that this fight, this match, I'll get there eventually, is going to the team fight stage.
And I think intriguing because I think Samper Soccer, I think the last time I saw Hunbats, I think about them losing that game, and it was Sam that was just melting beads off of whatever team it was they were playing that day. But then there was no immediate follow-up off of those Fear No Evils, things like that, on effectively cooldown. And it was just so difficult for the Dragons to find those initiations. And I think, Aggro, that's something that the desk brought up that they might be slightly concerned about, that sure, you got Sam jumping in, but you're going to rely on a blink from FineOK, the leap from PBM to engage on Shinto in the backline and Zapman who can kind of self-peel. Is that really a level of concern that the Dragons have to be worried about?
I'm not as worried as the desk is about that. I mean, you've got ways to make it happen, and plus the Leviathan's composition is going to be going at you a lot of the time anyway, so Fine has to blink out, but he should just get caged here.
That is not what I want to see when I'm rounding the corner, is everyone from the Leviathans coming in to close that gap.
Oh!
Fear No Evil from Samper Soccer makes things interesting, and Sam follows it up and ends up getting a kill here as well. First blood to the Leviathans, but the Jade Dragons get the next 2.
Really good rotation from the Jade Dragons. Look, FineOK didn't want to see that, but he saw what he saw, and he understood the position that he was then in, gets off all of his damage, which is all you can ask from him in that moment. He gets off all the damage, buys a ton of time for Sam and for Hurry and for Mike to get in range. And even though it's first blood for the Leviathans, 2 for 1, I like the Jade Dragons coming out of that fight. Really, really good play from FineOK to make some pretty delicious lemonade out of those lemons.
Yeah, it's about the best you could do in that situation. I think it's both of the assists. Samper Soccer and Hurrywin split the assists there as well. Or the kills, excuse me, there as well. So it's a good start for both jungle and mid. And it's those types of moments where I think you can see some of the disruption that the Jade Dragons can bring to this team fight. The wall's definitely something concerning maybe here in this game. It's so often you see, hey, we've got an Odin. We got to worry about those walls. Hey, we got a Ymir. We got to worry about those walls. Feels like everyone in this game, or both teams in this game, have some type of wall that they need to be worried about. Of course, the Odin Cage and the Ymir wall, so disruptive. You wonder then if at some point, in a game with 3 walls, you see somebody maybe prioritize a Phantom pickup to help out, in some of those team fights.
I would like a Phantom here for Mike, because you're going to get value out of it in a fight either way. The AoE damage mitigation, very good against a character like Baba Yaga, who's spreading her damage on the team fight. The wall value up against the Odin Cage or the Ymir Cage or the Ymir wall or both you really like. I don't think the Leviathans necessarily need a Phantom because you've got Rom, who's very good at killing these auto attack health-based things like a Cabrakan Cage. Because he can just activate the one and it'll count for 2 autos, you shave an auto off of that time to kill. And it's not so bad. Baba Yaga actually does struggle a bit against Cabrakan. I like this matchup for the Cabrakan. It's a pick that oftentimes gets overlooked in terms of counter matchups.
Wow.
But I like it.
Look at this early Gold Fury pulled by the Jade Dragons. Mike uses his ultimate and the course. Wrong use close by. Zapman, hey, we talked about the steal potential from this game. Can Zapman strike gold early on? No, he can. The Jade Dragons secure their own Fury. Might even get a kill onto Wrong You as well. It's best case scenario for the Dragons. They get Fury and a kill onto the Leviathan support.
Couldn't have gone any better. Good patience from the Dragons in that moment. I mean, Zapman snipes are coming down. They know they don't have the best secure. I mean, Izanami ultimate should be able to do it, but why worry? We can put Rongyu on the hook for it and make him pick up the Gold Fury, and then Zap can snipe it from there, but as soon as he does that, we can just all in commit onto him. It's going to cost us some ultimates, sure, but that's not the end of the world.
Hey, we don't care.
For the Jade Dragons. You're in a really good spot now, and most importantly, you're keeping pace for Whirlwind and Shinto, because that was one of the major problems in the last game. Worth noting that during that skirmish, Hurry did have to use beads and ultimate, but survived a double ultimate gank from the Leviathans. Both Shinto and Panatom used theirs. So Hurry stays alive while that play is going on, and the Jade Dragons execute it nicely.
Doesn't this feel like page 2 of the Dragons playbook? We're gunning it down technically, not in the same way that we do on page 1, but we're still grouping up very effectively for the counter engage on the right. We're going to aggressively pull a Gold Fury early in this game, and we're going to buy ourselves 2,000 gold of a lead in under 10 minutes of game time. And then we're going to rotate on over what could be a Pyromancer pull. And it's more likely, especially if you get a kill on a Yarkor here. Fear No Evil sets up for a kill. And that's Hurrywin picking it up. Final K rounds the backside, gets the stun onto Wrongu, but Panatom has now been left alone trying to deal some damage to Sam for Soccer, but the leap away is enough.
Really good disarm there from Mike. Not often the part of the Fafnir kit that you're utilizing super heavily, but underhand tactics in dwarf form is a disarm, and he forced Panatom's beads. That would have been a long duration where Panatom couldn't have done any significant damage in that Kingslayer. Hard to notice sometimes what the supports are able to do, but makes a big play there for the Jade Dragons as they get another objective off the back end.
And he was, not that it matters, but well-timed that Mike still had the group coerce there to get the Pyromancer taken down. Hurrywin receiving a little bit of damage from Wrongu and Shinto. The Shards of Ice won't be enough from Wrongu here. Sam for Soccer close by, halfway to the Fear No Evil, so likely nothing else there in the mid lanes. Now the Leviathans aggro, wondering what their route, not back into the game, it's not that drastic just yet, but back into the early game is, because the Jade Dragons have effectively been, oh my goodness, controlling everything.
It's all right. We talk for a living. It's totally.
Both of us.
No one is gonna notice. What? Not me, Dave. Don't throw me in.
You apologized not 5 minutes ago.
No, I did not.
All right. I'm not being dragged
Sorry,
down.
I know. I tried to mifflin you there for a moment.
You did.
But I'll let you off the hook for it. The one thing I will say for the Leviathans is that if I'm checking in on the builds for the Jade Dragons, they've gone. Greedy's probably too strong a word, but they have prioritized their items that they would normally go for and have not leaned into anti-heal quite yet. And if I'm Panatom in particular, that has got to be exciting, because now I feel like I can maybe make some plays in these team fights. But instead of building for that damage and going for these big dive-in plays with that Kingslayer, check out the second item. He's going Magi's second. And I think that's really telling for how difficult it's going to be for a set up against this team comp. I mean, look at what all the peel options the Jade Dragons have across this team. Final K, 2 stuns and a wall. Sam for Soccer, Fear No Evil. Whirlwind, Dragonflight is very difficult to deal with. The Fear, of course, from Sigil Mastery. Mike with the stun and the disarm. And then he can transform and double stun you again off of that. And I think Panatom's
That's a lot
right.
of disengage.
That's a lot of disengage. And I think Panatom's right that he needs Magi's. I might not have gotten it this early, but because of the way this game is going and the Dragons pacing to it, I think he understands that it's not like we're going to get 4 more team fights where we're fairly even. At this rate, you're getting a team, like 2 team fights where it's fairly even, and then the Jade Dragons are likely too far ahead if they win both of those. You can't, you're not necessarily going to be there for all the team fights. You have to make your choices, especially when you're this far behind. And that's what good teams do, is they take these fights where it's like, yeah, you can take it, but you're unfavored. And if you don't take it, then we still get the reward, and it's like we took it anyways.
That was quick reaction time from Zapman, but wasn't quick enough. Sam for Soccer uses the Fear No Evil, but Zapman immediately on both actives. Watch out, though. Final K's got his hold. Up to the sky goes Zapman. Immediately cancels it, rolls on out, and it looks like Zap will survive, but he had to use everything to stay in that fight.
Really, really close. Wanted Sam to be a little bit more patient on that Sacred Monkey toss. No reason not just to wait for the hammer. But either way, you get what you came for. And this is exactly what I'm talking about, right? Is that a team fight? No. But in the how many team fights do we have before this game gets out of hand counter, it certainly counts for that. Right. If you want to count it as more of a doomsday clock. The Leviathans do a good job of spreading the map. They get tier 1 mid, they get tier 1 in solo. They get some farm. It's not like they're completely not, sitting on their hands and not doing anything, just clearing back harpies on their side of the map or something like that. But that is definitely indicative of how the pacing of this game has been for the Jade Dragons.
It's page 2 of the playbook. If we're not going to run it down with kills, we're going to run it down on objectives, and the Leviathans haven't had an answer just yet. Going to be some pressure put on Mike here, but he'll hop on away. The way that the Dragons have played around this Fafnir is so interesting because it's not like crazy like mechanical stuff, right? It's just, hey, let's transform, use this group coerce, and take down these objectives as quick as possible. It's nothing too far-fetched, but the Dragons are doing it effectively.
It's just about their grouping and their timings and their ward control, and all of those things really contribute. Zap doesn't have relics, but still has his role, so he's A-okay. I was talking about Phantom and how he must be feeling earlier. He didn't see any anti-heal. He presses tab, everyone full bot anti. On the same back. Pestilence, Brawlers, Beatstick, and Divine and Ruin. I think the only thing that was started before those players backed was a magic focus for Heroin. And everyone else was just able to full buy. So not only are you like, oh man, they all got anti-heal. I'm like, how much gold do these guys have? You know,
everyone got it at the same time.
They had enough? All of them? At the same time? That is not a good feeling now for Panatom, who has delayed his build pretty significantly. And I can't imagine that he's going to be willing to go into Transcendence at this point. But I don't love Heartseeker for him this early on in the build. And I don't love Dominance for him either.
He's in a tough spot.
I don't like any of his options coming out of Charge Morningstar. I'm interested to see where he's going with it.
Tough spot for Panatom. 1 level down, so at least XP isn't that far out of control. Yarkor has done a good job. While all the skirmishing was happening on left, Yarkor pushed down the right wave, so that's gotten him 1 level advantage over Fine. Okay, Pyromancer started by the Leviathans this time. They're being a little bit more proactive. Now Mike jumps in, transforms, as an Odin Cage in the back line has left Yarkor alone with Panda Cat, but there's the coerce and there's the damage. Now the Odin forced to leave. Up into the sky goes Zapman, trying to save his life just for a little bit longer. Shinto's in the ultimate as well. And look at the wave of the Dragons push forward. They have only been able to find one, but the damage just around the corner.
Wrongview's gonna fall, and so will Shinto. Double kill for Sam for Soccer. And it's only Panatom and Yarkor left. The Leviathans got Whirlwind, but I don't think that's going to be enough to deter the Jade Dragons from heading towards the Fire Giant.
Wow, this is a 16-minute Fire Giant. And Polar Bear Mike is going to assist with the coerce on the Panda Cat. Yarkor close by as well. Fine, okay. With all those stuns and more, it's just going to delay the Leviathan solo laner from getting in there. There is a delay, 10 seconds on Hurriwind. If the Dragons really want to roll the dice here, they can wait for their mid laner to come back. They won't do so. Instead, let's just confirm the objective and confirm the Pyromancer and aggro. We are not even 17 minutes into the game, and I don't think it's overextending to say we're starting to spiral a bit here.
Definitely. And look, Hurwin dies in that fight. He's the only one for the Jade Dragons. Sometimes we talk about good deaths. This would not be one for Panda Cat, as he's been caught in the mid lane, greeting for a mid wave. And that is a massive play for the Leviathans. Like, so big that if they come back to win this game, that's going to be the first play that I think of. Because all of a sudden, the Jade Dragons, instead of having 4 members with FG, for a long period of time, Hurwin was just coming off respawn. We back, we buy, we're good to go. Now, have to wait 30 seconds for Panda Cat, and even when they start to group, they're not going to be nearly as strong on these objectives. It's not, you know, they shouldn't not push anymore with the Fire Giant. You know, they shouldn't just take it and say that's all we got, but certainly a really big play.
Mitigated.
Right. Yeah, very, very big play. And here's the thing, Panda Cat, like, he got Silver Branch. Maybe he needed that wave in order to get it, and that's why he greeted for the fight. But what I was going to say before Panda got picked was that Hurwin dies in that last fight, and sometimes we talk about good deaths, and that's a really good example of one for the Jade Dragons. Hurry has really aggressive positioning around the backside of that fight. He did half of Zapman's HP, forced his roll, and then really created this zone for the Dragons where no one could get in. And he did a ton of damage on the way out. So he really earned that Fire Giant for the Dragons. And that's the type of player Hurry is. That's why I think he really fits well on gods like Tiamat, who are willing to be a bit more aggressive and jump in. And I think Morgan Le Fay can fit that same sort of play style for him.
Well, Panda Cat is back on the map. Shy one FG buff. But this is a great opportunity for the Jade Dragons to effectively seal this game. They're going to transform with Mike. Can use the Coerce while the Phoenix Siege begins. This is an early Phoenix. Frenzy and Coerce on everyone. And look at the Phoenix melt away. Yarkor jumps into the back line. Will he survive any longer? FinoK's got something to say about it, and so does Panda Cat, who's hit a massive ultimate in the back as well. Look at Shinto, though, pouring the damage into the front line of the Jade Dragons, and that's got to kill.
Oh, good damage from Hurry, though, with that Sigil Mastery, looking for Shinto, who uses knockback immunity nicely, but this left side Phoenix is toast.
Wow, Sanford Soccer is just going to split things out here, maybe even get the kill. He forces the Aegis, which might be just as good because the left side Phoenix falls aggro not 20 minutes into game number 3 here. The Jade Dragons running away with things. They've got an 8,000 plus gold lead. Fire Giant for another minute and 15 seconds. Primal Fury to take as well. Uphill battle to say the least for the Leviathans.
And when we're talking about Dragons at their best, if I had to pick one word to describe their play style, it would be disrespectful. They're just going to show up and they're going to do their plan, and they don't care much for what you're going to do because they think that they're just going to do it better and they're going to execute on it. And it's things like Mike simply walking up to the left side Phoenix and going, "Hey, I'm ulting and we're getting this, so deal with it." And you've got to show up. And teams, I think a lot of teams waffle on those a little bit too long. They take too long. They don't just keep that mental pressure on their opponents. And in that play, Panatom was clearing right side tier 2. That's why the Dragons walk in. You know, it's not disrespect because they don't think their opponents are good or because they think they're just strictly better. It's just definitive. You know, this is what we are doing and we are not hesitating on it. And when the Dragons start to falter, it's because either A, they're definitive in their calls and the calls aren't good and they summarily get punished for it, which can happen. And I don't think that anyone should really, you know, if I'm the Dragons, if I'm Kabam, their coach, those I live with. You know, that's fine by me.
Right. It's for making decisions, right?
Right. It's the ones where they lose that confidence and they lose that ability to just go, no, we want this and we're going to take it now. And there's not a whole lot that you can do about it. And that's what I think has led to some of those struggles we've seen.
They're going to do it again?
Yeah, because it's the same
situation.
Same situation.
They don't even have FG buff, but they're going to coerce. They're going to use Frenzy maybe on the back end here. The wall from Wrong You buys a little bit of time. And that's going to force the Jade Dragons to think twice about sieging up this Phoenix, but the mindset was the same, FG buff or not.
Sure, and those are the ones you live with, you know? Is that the right call in that moment? Doesn't seem to be the case, but we gave it a shot, and maybe we can punish someone for it. Shinto nearly lost his beads. Mike ends up being off the mark on the hammer. But I love that. That is my favorite type of mentality for the Jade Dragons. Just, this is what we're doing. Doesn't matter what you say about it.
Leviathans now have to step up, don't they? Or maybe they don't want to, but we saw what the Dragons were willing to do without an FG buff. With an FG buff as well. We've seen both sides of this coin now from the Dragons. Already left side Phoenix gone. Only a tier 2 tower and right left standing. So the Leviathans have to find a miracle engage at this point, you feel like. But I don't know who you're happy about engaging on. Panda Cat is swinging. Hurywin's got plenty of gold and kills in the back pocket. Sanford Soccer, the one jumping into your team, is feeling mighty fine here at this point at 406. I mean, talk about not even just macro game, deciding where you're going to defend and things like that in the individual team fight. Leviathans, they're going to be feeling uncomfortable. Feels like everyone can kill.
Yeah, I don't think that there's an easy way for them to win these fights. I mean, Yarkor got a really good cage last fight, and it just didn't matter. And this is something I didn't know whenever we were talking about whether or not the Dragons need a Phantom, which they did not go in this game. And the more I've thought about it, the more I like that they didn't go a Phantom. Because you've got Izanami, who shreds down the Odin cage, and you've got a Fafnir when he transforms, will insta-kill all the Odin cages as well. So you don't need to respect that ultimate whatsoever. I think the Leviathans may have taken the bait from the Jade Dragons in the drafting phase.
Look at this. This time, the Jade Dragons don't even have to use the transformation, the coerce, or the frenzy. And quietly, the FG will roar down to the back pockets of the Jade Dragons. So, left side Phoenix is respawned. Couple auto attacks away from death here. Mid lane Phoenix exposed. Right side Phoenix going to be exposed in just a moment. At this point, it's about the Leviathans picking and choosing where they can defend.
A quiet roar sounds like a Halo map. You know, they always have these really gaudy names.
Yeah, I expect compensation if that's used.
Right, okay, yeah. Well, Infinite's coming out soon.
There you go. And so, you know what else is coming out soon is the transformation, the coerce, and probably the frenzy here from PBM. Draugr buff is there. Wrong You has used more walls to stop auto attacks from reaching their base. than maybe I've seen blocking off the Jade Dragons here in game number 3. PBM pops the Frenzy, pops the Coerce. Zapman left alone in the back, but he's able to re-engage Yarkor. He's not, though. Some snipes might find their way onto Sanford Soccer, and they do. Shinto has poured out a lot of damage in this fight, and the Leviathans have been able to answer that call. 2 down for the Dragons, and the right side Phoenix stands.
But look at this left side Phoenix. This is a good call from the Dragons. You have to stay here and keep the Leviathans busy. You know that Panatom's going to have to go over, and he will save this left side Phoenix just barely in time. A little surprised they didn't go in a little bit harder, but no one could put any damage on Ashinto in that fight. Zapman was the focus, and until that fight, Zap was bottom of the player damage charts in the entire game. He was lower than Rongyu. He still is, actually. That's where the focus has been for the Jade Dragons.
Look who's up top.
Diving Zap. Look who's up top. It's Shinto, and this is what this team wants. They want teams to dive Zap. They want Shinto to free cast. Surprised the Dragons are playing into that dichotomy a little bit. I'd like to see them switch over.
This game is far from over if the Leviathans have anything to say about it. The Odin cage, Yarkor dies, but it's kind of that corralling of the Dragons where then Shinto can just kind of fire those fire bolts out that seems to have been paying off here. So Oni Fury gets taken. Some value in that for the Leviathans now because the waves pushing in are going to be slowed down a little bit. Got a minute and 50 seconds, nearly 2 minutes left on the FG buff. You got it on a few important members of your team. Maybe there's still some value here, especially if you get a kill onto Rongyu, and it's big. Free pickings here for Hurrywin. Now a chance to re-engage. Again,
love it.
Minute and 30 seconds left on the FG.
Love it. Don't worry about the wave. It's going to take forever to get there. It doesn't matter. We'll get it later. This Phoenix is so low. Just walk up, kill it. Don't have to worry about Rongyu's walls, which, as you pointed out, have been instrumental in keeping the Dragons off these Phoenixes.
So 5v4. How do the Dragons want to play the rest of this? Not overextending is number one. So you can regroup. The right side Phoenix still low. Now instead it's a transformation for Mike. Frenzy is there. The game plan can just be run back now by the Jade Dragons. You got to watch out for Shinto in this fight. Need to find a way to get onto the Baba Yaga, but there's no dive from the Dragons, so there's no pushback yet from the Leviathans. In the mid lane, Phoenix goes quietly as well.
I think at that point, I don't know. That's such a tough call because the only one who can start that fight for the Leviathans now is Yarkor.
Right.
And he had Blink Cage. I'm a little surprised he doesn't pull the trigger on it because that's a low percentage fight for the Leviathans to take. 5v4, Yarkor didn't have beads. If he blink cages, he instant dies. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But is that a worse fight, basically doing a 5v3 with a cage down underneath our Phoenix in comparison to now where we have 2 Phoenixes down and Fire Giant is falling off soon? These are the worst times to lose your Phoenixes. It's if you're going to give a Phoenix, it's best to do it right away.
Right off the
because
bat.
then you've got tons of time to push out your waves, get good vision around fire, all that kind of stuff. It's actually doubly bad because remember where the wave state was for the Leviathans. They had that wave had pushed all the way down. So that means that waves are going to fire waves build on that side, and now it's going to be even hard. They put even more pressure on your Titan. So it's going to be a long time before those Phoenixes come up. I think the Leviathans are in a position where they have to give away a 3rd Fire Giant in this game and try again on the right side Phoenix.
Jade Dragons have not shied away from Fafnir transform, Frenzy, take down Phoenix, and the Leviathans, outside of that one fight where Shinto went big, haven't had much to say about it. Unfortunately, this time the map state not quite there. I think Fine OK as well, 1, 2, and 8. We've talked plenty about the initiation from Sam, the initiation, really the facilitation from PBM. I think Fine OK on this Kabrakan at 1, 2, and 8 has had a pretty good game as well, affecting 9 out of the 12 kills.
Agreed.
And it's just, it's that extra bit of something you have to consider, right? Where the Leviathans suddenly now have stuns and walls, and you know, you've talked about the self-pool, the disengage. Some of that might find its way onto Panatom here. Ultimate from Panda Cat, no good. Wall from Rongyu is good. Lucky for Panatom, he can walk out.
But he has to use Kingslayer, and look, Pana uses his ultimate. That's a big deal if we're talking about FG secure. But I don't think they're going to need it now.
It's going to come up.
Because Panatom, no way Panatom wants to be anywhere near this fight if he doesn't have his ultimate. I wonder if I'm the Dragons, I'd be discussing whether or not we can hold it until 30 minutes to get the FG. But they will not. play with fire, they'll just kill it.
Surprised you don't see Zapman send some snipes the FG's way?
No, he needs it on these Phoenix defenses because he's not getting damage off any other way. He's getting dove so hard by FineOK. If they know that Rom snipes are down, he's dead to the Cabrakan alone, basically. It's really hard to peel that character whenever he has Magi's with this type of composition from Leviathans.
So Zapman at least has that opportunity now. As the minions, fire minions, push in the mid wave. Fire minions a little bit out on the left side, but they're going to catch up here eventually. Left side Phoenix will respawn as well. So not all is lost yet for the Leviathans. They have some time on their side, and they have that Draugr buff we've talked about. Maybe buys you another auto attack or two. With FineOK being as strong as he is, no surprise we see the Cabrakan just push out on that mid wave. You imagine here, Aggro, what's worked for the Leviathans has been cage, and hope that Shinto can funnel some damage into whoever's trapped in there, and you might have to see more of the same. We'll see how the Leviathans respond now. Go button has been pressed. FineOK wall into the back line, and then a stun. Hasn't quite found what the Dragons are looking for. Did buy space, hasn't bought the Phoenix yet.
Yeah, but you got Shinto's ultimate, and that's the biggest
that's
get
massive.
in that moment. You didn't get any relics on their side, so this isn't a free fight, but look at that fire wave on left.
Ooh, Hurrywin's taking some big damage. Is that enough to give the Leviathans a win in this fight? Double stun inside of the cage. Zapman's found the snipes onto Sanford Soccer, and the first kill to the Leviathans. Immediately answered back, though, as FineOK has picked up the kill onto the Leviathans jungler.
And Panda Cat still healthy, still has both relics. Mid Phoenix has already respawned and then fallen again. Not looking good. Someone's got to answer that Titan wave.
Uh-oh, right side Phoenix walled off here by Rongyr. You tell me Winions are
Hello?
going to a game where we don't have a Tiamat? Leviathans turn around, finally back towards the Titan, but at this point the Jade Dragons walk in. They auto-attack it a couple of times, and we are going on towards the end here. Wall off from FineOK onto Zapman, and the Winions get it done in a game, the only game without a Tiamat. Well played from the Dragons. Felt like we were trending in that direction for a long time.
Look, maybe we got to tell Ajax that the your Titan is under attack sound cue has got to, we got to bump that up a couple decibels because teams just, they forget.
Well, if you would level, I would make a reference, and people out there will get it. If you would level with us in WoW, you, me, and Pretty Hair, you can install a mod that blasts air horns in your ears when like the boss is starting to like do special moves.
We need one of those.
We need that. We need air horns.
We need a plug-in. Yeah, we need a plug-in for when fire minions are attacking your Titan.
Yep.
It just goes back to that pick onto Rongyr. The fact that they don't get the wave, that they kill it right as Fire Giant is falling off of them, that they get left Phoenix and mid Phoenix, and the fact that that wave state was where it was, no one from the Leviathans really did a great job of clearing that out. And eventually you just lost to PvE.
Yep.
That's what makes MOBA so difficult, is you've got PvP and PvE elements. Leviathans failed on the latter.
I think Fafnir plus Frenzy plus any objective you want kind of summarizes this game here from the Jade Dragons. They take it 2-1 over the Atlantis Leviathans. Pretty good looking from the Jade Dragons now moving forward. Aggro and I will take a break, and then the desk will come back to round things out.
What's up with it? Do it cause I love it and I stuck with it. We ain't with the subbing in the cut with it. Please none of the talks, I heard enough of it. Like, what you gonna do? Where you at? Who you with? You ain't really about this, don't talk about it. Really on the move, on the map, never slip. Keep your hands to your lips, don't talk about it. Real eyes, real lives all the time. Stand on it, if we said it, we don't walk around it. Loose lips, sink ships, red cup, blue strips, new phone, who this? No, we don't allow it. Really on go, I don't know what's an off day. Now we on road, came from smoking in the hallway. Now we got shows, boys feeling like Broadway. Always look both ways, even on a crossway. Driving down Cross Bay, out town Barclays. Really on big tanks, came up a small way. Championship rings, baby, that's a ball game. Oh, she want a little bag, baby, that's small change. Yeah, that money talk. If we ain't cool, then cut me off. No breaking news, don't run your mouth. Thought it was the plug, now he running off. Thought it was a plug, now he running off. What you gonna do? Where you at? Who you with? You ain't really about this, don't talk about it. Really on the move, on the map, never slip. Keep your hands to your lips, don't talk about it. Real eyes, real lives, all the time. Stand on it, if we said it, we don't walk around it. Loose lips, ain't ships, red cup, blue strips, new phone, who this? No, we don't allow it. Whoa. Don't do that, we the best coming out of BK, I thought you knew that. Step up in the function, all these women like who that. Got me looking like money, yeah, they love me, yeah, true that. Big racks, new bag, new swag, we ain't cutting no slack. Why they mad? Don't do that. See them coming, no mad, 6 feet, move back. How we got it, don't ask, don't do that. Nah, cause they ain't never put us on. Now they wanna come around and see what's going on. Nah, and we don't follow protocols. We some kings like sis, no waterfall, ISO. What you gonna do? Where you at? Who you with? You ain't really about this, don't talk about it. Really on the move, on the map, never slip. Keep your hands to your lips, don't talk about it. Real eyes, real lives, all the time. Stand on it, if we said it, we don't walk around it. Loose lips, ain't ships, red cup, blue strips, new phone, who this? No, we don't allow it.
What's up, Smite fans? Dolson here, and if you haven't already, you want to make sure you're checking out twitch.tv/SmiteGame on Mondays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, because we are doing the Team Content Days, where we bring in one of your favorite SPL teams, we sit down and do all sorts of crazy content with them. We've got Emotion.
Let's go!
Holy moly, man. We've got Mifflin throwing himself at the green screen. We've got plenty of actual informative content around all of your favorite Smite players and teams themselves.
Because we weren't really thinking about like the console. We were thinking about like how can we beat the PC teams.
So make sure you tune in on Mondays from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time to twitch.tv/SmiteGame. And hey, don't worry, if you can't catch it there, you can't catch it live, make sure to go to youtube.com/SmitePro to catch the VODs after the fact. It's a whole lot of fun. You don't want to miss it because hey, you never know what's going to happen.
Yep. That's, chat. You just gotta know who's daddy. That's how it be, man.
Back everyone to the SPL powered by Alienware, and as you just saw there on Monday, pretty much right where you're watching this, we're going to be going over some supports, or talking to the supports, I guess the right human way to word that. I don't know what the words that came out of my mouth prior to that were. Of course, if you missed any of the content days, fear not. Not only are the VODs available for you, but we're uploading all of those segments onto YouTube. So go ahead and follow us, youtube.com/SmitePro, and you can see all that. I know a lot of the Titan Media Day just went up next week, and maybe over the next coming weeks, you're going to be seeing the Leviathans. But again, Monday, we're going to be sitting down with a lot of the supports, doing the trivia, check-ins, all sorts of that fun stuff as we break it down and figure out how they're feeling. But I know how the Dragons are feeling right now, Taco, because they are now officially the 3rd seed in the SPL Phase 2. They got themselves a big old win over the Leviathans, and they looked really good doing it.
They looked great in that Game 3, but the Leviathans certainly did not make it easy for the Dragons. Definitely had to sweat a little bit at the end there, especially for that victory. But between Winions and base sieges and the base being exposed in general, I think the Jade Dragons just did an excellent job here toggling between their aggression, specifically between Mike, Sam, and Fine-OK. I think that those three just really got the most of their benefit off of the toggling of like the Fear No Evil applications, and then Mike would try to go in after the fact. You know, it didn't matter who was initiating. You just know for a fact that one of the other three was going to be filling the void after the fact.
Making sure they kept things a little more interesting. They had the Izanami, the Morgan Le Fay on their team, and maybe prominent, but like you said, kind of sweating towards the end. This Phoenix Siege was a brave one from the Dragons, but they did that multiple times, sometimes without an FG.
That clip, though, is probably one of the favorite reasons I could ever think of to describe why Morgan Le Fay is as good as she is, because having an Odin go in and then instantaneously be knocked up, Yakor having to eat so much damage in the process, that's what made it so complicated for the Leviathans, though, because their primary initiators, between that Odin and Amir, never really had an opportunity to flourish. They were constantly being met with crowd control, and it's just a lot to try and handle, and especially when you have to worry about being free casted on in the back line immediately after.
I'll admit I was a little trepidatious when I saw Cabrakan locked in, but FinoK did exactly what FinoK needed to. 2-2 and 8 is majorly set up here. Same thing, PBM 1-1 and 9. And Pandacat, I'm pretty sure pumped out a ton of damage, but you can see Hurry and Sam, the ones who were picking up a lot of the kills. Yeah, the Pandacat down there. Top damage on his team, not quite in the game. Shinto, 24,000, but it didn't translate to as much. I'm sure a lot of that, towards the tail end, again, the very end, when the Leviathans started to make what felt like a very solid stand against the Dragons. Unfortunately, just a little bit too late.
And that's the thing, is that these numbers seem low, but you have to remember that these teams were largely not really looking for a lot of those engagements throughout the early to mid-game. This was a primary focus on the farm aspect, and then trying to turn that farm and all of it, the objective play, I think, was also a little bit problematic there for the Leviathans. I think they kind of just accepted the fact that they were constantly having to back down, essentially, from a lot of those objective fight score, and I think that just created a lot of space for the Jade Dragons to work in.
Well, they needed they had all that space, and it led them to a victory, so they're happy with all that space. They wish there was maybe a little bit more space for where they are in the standings, but they've got their own space, which is where they're sitting as we go to Sam for an interview. And Sam, I got to ask, you played 3 gods across 3 games. The first thing that stood out to my mind in this is how are you choosing, the Nikes, your Thanatoses, your Hunbats? Is it your call? Is it the team? Where's it coming from?
Generally like a mixture of the team's ideas, but mostly I'd say me.
So out here just swinging the god pool around as it is. But in game 2, you guys hit a little bit of a bump. Was it the Tiamat that was the problem, or was there a little bit more going on?
I think partially, but I think there's just more to that. It's not like as simple as that, maybe partly like Gilgamesh or whatever, but I think a lot of our mistakes come from when we're like not on the same page as a team and we're not always like having the same idea. So I think generally when we're like together doing the same thing, all have the same idea, things go very well, and that's just what we got to work on the most.
Well, it seems like you locked in for game number 3 because you guys, again, maybe not the most control you would have liked, but you're still able to get the win there. You've secured 3rd place now as well. And I'm curious, what is the mindset for the rest of the phase? Are you guys focused more on what's going to lead into playoffs, or are you still kind of in the here and now for the next few weeks?
I think generally in the here and now, just trying to get the best placement we can at least for the phase, and then once we get to playoffs, we'll just figure stuff out then.
I know you guys play the Valkyries later this week, so we'll get to see you again. But for now, you can go ahead and sit back, relax, because you got the win. So congratulations on your win, man, and have a good day.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
Potako, that does it. They secure themselves 3rd place. As of right now, we'll have to see how long they're keeping kept in that spot, if they can maintain it, as well as where the Leviathans are going to go, because the rest of the week is where things are, well, not just getting more interesting, but maybe raising the stakes a little bit. Not so much for the Dragons. They're going to be playing the Valkyries a little bit later on, although there's going to be a little bit of a threat. But the Bolts are fighting up there. Kings, depending on another loss, all of a sudden they're tied for 2nd. There's a lot to happen.
Tension certainly going to start rising here, Gore, as we approach that Phase 2 playoffs period. And Jade Dragons, they might be in 3rd for right now, but I'm sure they're not satisfied with it. Camelot Kings, 2nd place position, not looking all that cozy right now for the Camelot Kings. They're going to have a really tough set coming up soon here, too, up against the Bolts, so could be a really impactful one in terms of where the Jade Dragons line up and all of that.
Well, their spot is in jeopardy. Another spot that I'd say is in jeopardy, you wouldn't guess it, 3-5 for the Titans, 1-7 for the Scarabs. The Scarabs are playing the Titans tomorrow. If they win that and manage to start turning a lot of these sets around, depending on how the Titans changes go and how the Scarabs changes continue to go, it could change things a lot. And again, if you're looking at those bottom spots, that's where your eyes got to be for people shifting in and out of playoff contention, whereas up at the top, it's all seeding. In fact, the Scarabs and Titans are playing tomorrow. You had mentioned the Bolts and the Kings. It's just going to be, that's an action-packed day in and of itself, but then we have the Leviathans Warriors, the Scarabs Kings, the Bolts Titans a little bit later on this week. There's just a lot of sets I'm excited for.
Yeah, in general, I think that all of these teams are trying to close out the split relatively strong. Everybody wants to try and boost their standings as much as possible because the better your standings, potentially the better your seeding for playoffs, I would assume. And not only that, but it's also just a good confidence boost, Gore. It's the mid-year approach at this point in time, so nobody wants to find themselves at the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. You're trying to make that grind, not just for playoffs. Like playoffs, phase 2 playoffs is one thing in and of itself, but you're trying to make sure that you're a dominant team throughout the entire time, and that's where the Bolts are right now. 8-0, they're going to be putting that streak up to the test tomorrow at 1 p.m. as they go on against the Kings, so make sure you tune in then to make sure that you don't miss any of the action. But otherwise, from myself, from Taco, from everyone here, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.